Thank you for joining us, everyone. My name's James, and I am an activist in the pro-extinction movement. And we are a social justice movement for the abolition of all suffering. So in the same way that slavery was abolished, in the same way that people are trying to abolish animal agriculture, our movement is actually trying to abolish all types of extreme suffering and cruelty and bad lives. So for most people, they have an assumption by default that life existing is fair. But actually, the reality is that it's not fair. So for most people, they think it's fair because there are some good lives, and that makes it fair, even if there are bad lives. But that's actually not the way that fairness works. In fact, if there's anyone suffering through a bad life, then that makes it unfair for any life to exist, right? If there can be bad lives and unfair suffering, unfairly bad lives, then it's not fair. So in the same way that having pleasure at the expense of someone's suffering is not fair, having good lives at the expense of there being bad lives is also not fair. And that should just be obvious. So, and the thing is that those in their good lives don't actually need them, right? It's not like morally urgent or necessary, whereas those in bad lives do actually need to be prevented from being born into those bad lives. So that's why the only right thing to do is extinction, for the total abolition of extreme suffering and cruelty and being forced to suffer, right? So extinction is the only way to abolish the ultimate harm, which is going on all around the world, which is being forced to live through a terrible life. And the spectrum of terrible lives is pretty terrible to think about, right? Most people only really think about the upper end of the spectrum where you've got a stubbed toe, and they really just never think beyond that very often. Whereas at the far extreme end of the suffering spectrum for the sufferers in this world, it's effectively beyond comprehension for most people. And in a sense, that inability to comprehend how extreme the suffering is in the world is actually one of the main reasons why people are so willing to allow it. It's because it's just so terrible that it's actually beyond their comprehension. So they don't even understand how problematic it is as a result, which is completely crazy, effectively. But that is the reality that we're living in, where people are so irrational that they allow extreme suffering and defend it, excuse it, support it, make fun of it even. So, hey bro, love the stream. Quick question, can you make a cup of juice? No, thank you. I don't think we'll be doing that. Someone says hello. Hello, hoodie guy. So, yeah, as usual, we're looking to do some debates today. And we have our Discord server set up here for anybody that wants to jump in, ask any questions, have a debate. But really, the stream is for promoting the pro-extinction movement, which is fighting to abolish all suffering with total extinction for animals and humans and all life, working towards a suffering-free world, a universe with no life, no possibility of extreme suffering. It's actually the most important thing, the only important thing to do. And essentially, we value happiness and life existing and good lives as being essentially almost worthless, especially when in comparison to safety from extreme suffering, right? What's more important, preventing victims from being tortured or allowing people to have some sort of happy lives at the expense of all of the victims being tortured? So, basically people are choosing to prefer the lucky ones, choosing to favor the happy ones. So when they say, that's just a part of life, bad lives existing, suffering existing is just a part of life, it really actually translates to let's just favor the lucky ones, right? Let's do what they want instead of what's best for the victims. Let's do what's best for the lucky ones that don't even need to exist, instead of actually doing what's right for all of the unlucky ones in this world. And this also translates to a complete lack of activism, where people just don't want to make the world better. They enjoy the fact that it's unfair, essentially, and they allow it instead of actually doing anything about it, which they really should be, and we now are. So the pro-extinction movement started 4 years ago. I joined 1 year ago, and it's been growing globally ever since. Again, you guys should really check out our website, proextinction.com, and check out just how many social media channels we have, just how many activists we have. So there's a page on the website, social media channels, and you can see that we have dozens of activists all around the world doing street events, doing protests, doing live stream debates on various different social media platforms. So the pro-extinction movement, which I am in the leadership for, is a serious and real movement, right? This is not just a troll stream or anything like that. It's actually a movement with lots of people from all around the world, and it's growing every single day because all of our activists are doing activism every day to grow the movement, making videos, several every single day, going out on the street, debating people, interviewing people, asking why they wouldn't support the end of all suffering. So we are coming to, rock the boat. The movement is growing rapidly, and we will be challenging people on their acceptance and allowing of all of the suffering in the world, right? Because it's not actually rational or logical or ethical or fair or right or correct to allow all of these bad lives and to essentially torture these innocent victims just so that we can have fun. So it is a dystopia in that sense, right? Most of the life on the planet is just suffering terribly, and it's absolutely unacceptable to allow life to exist and to suffer like that. So in the same way that you wouldn't want a psychopath to have children, we shouldn't allow life to exist in the world either. It's not actually safe for it. It's only safe for the very lucky ones. And again, people just favor them. They say, well, yeah, let's support the lucky ones at the expense of the unlucky ones. So it's not at the expense of the lucky ones, obviously, but it is at the expense of the unlucky ones. And so the happy people say, yeah, this is a great system. This is a fair system. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. And essentially they end up not caring at all about the victims of life, the victims of extreme suffering. So that is the sad state of the world that we live in, where it is literally true and completely true, extremely true, that people do not care that the victims of life are suffering. They will literally just say, well, that's an interesting, curious, and entertaining, fascinating part of life that we can learn about, instead of actually saying, wow, we shouldn't allow them to suffer like that. In the same way that when watching a nature documentary, people just find it interesting, right? They don't actually care about the victims. And so this is because they're not actually capable of comprehending extreme suffering. They're not capable of empathizing with it or understanding it, because their rationality capacity is low and restricted and animalistic, effectively. So, the rational way to watch a nature documentary is to be completely horrified for the poor victims of extreme suffering, the animals being eaten alive, starving to death, just suffering terribly. And again, it's easy to romanticize it as there being some balance in their lives, but actually for the majority there is no balance. And for animals in particular, it's pure survival instead of flourishing, right? It's just survival and suffering. Whereas for humans, the lucky ones, it's mostly just pleasure instead of just surviving, right? But for the unlucky ones, it's just survival and just suffering, just misery. And yeah, it's very sad that people are just very happy to just allow it, say it's just a part of life, and that who cares, basically. It sucks to be them, exactly. But it's not right, okay? So the logically correct thing, the actually ethical thing, the technically correct thing is total extinction so that we don't allow bad lives anymore. So that's why we do have to grow the pro-extinction movement, and we do have to make total extinction possible so that we can help the victims, right? The current society is happy for all of these bad lives and suffering to exist, and especially when it comes to nature, they think it's a good thing and they want more of it. Most people would probably push a button to double the forests on the planet and double the suffering, because they think it's cool, right? It benefits them. It's like, yeah, that's awesome. For us, who cares about the animals? So the world is completely unethical. The pro-life position, the pro-suffering and pro-life position that everyone has, that the vast, vast, vast majority of the world has, is completely incorrect, completely wrong, completely unethical, completely evil, and it is in effect just torturing innocent animals and children and people to death so that we can have fun. It's, in other words, it's like being a demon who is ruling hell and saying, yeah, this is great. Why would we want to shut this down? In fact, it's stark, it's incredibly similar to that comparison, right? That effectively, yeah, for the victims of this world, who are the majority of the population all around us, who just get ignored, for them, we are effectively in hell. And everyone else is saying, this is great, let's keep it going. So it really is like demons torturing the victims for fun and saying we should never let this stop. We should never even think about ending suffering or helping the victims. We should just let it keep going, find any excuse to allow it. So again, it's effectively pure evil. It's the complete lack of morality or ethics. So I mean, humans are effectively just animalistic, and they're all encouraging it to each other, which creates a bit of a circle jerk almost, where it's like an echo chamber, right? It's everyone grows up in a society that supports the existence of suffering, treats it as entertaining, and the victims are just entertainment, really, or inconvenience, and that's all they are. It's like, oh, these poor sufferers, if only they would, pull pull up their bootstraps and work harder. And that's all they get, right? If you're suffering and it's not your fault, well, people just don't care. So someone says, will you volunteer to be first in line for extinction? Yeah, I would. But it's not the time for human extinction yet. We have to do animal extinction first. And we don't support doing that as vigilantes, but as a government. So that is our plan, to become the pro-extinction government and to then legally start carrying out extinction in an organized and structured way. So it's not going to be a virus, it's not going to be a nuke or anything like that. It's going to be much more boring, but reliable and effective and organized and rational, right? We're not just going to nuke the planet or something silly like that. That's just, people's short attention span demanding something interesting, instead of just making sure that we do extinction in a responsible and intelligent and scientific way. Is this for real a total anti-life philosophy? Yeah, absolutely. And I encourage everyone in the stream to join the Discord, and I'll bring you up on the stream and we can have a debate live, or you can ask any questions. So yeah, is this an anti-life philosophy? Well, it's not a philosophy. It's actually an ideology. So we are actually coming to make this happen. So it's not just talk. All of our activists are working to make total extinction actually happen. That is part of the plan of our movement, is to carry it out once the movement has grown enough to actually take over the world, start running it ethically, and to then begin with animal extinction before we even think about human extinction. So actually, the more humans, the better for now. And so we're against any violence or self-harm or any individual acts like that. Again, we're against vigilantism. We want to do it as a government in an organized and peaceful, orderly fashion, right? But again, it won't be optional. We cannot allow people to just continue allowing suffering to exist. So it cannot be optional, right? So this is the first movement for non-optional extinction, and the first movement that isn't just a philosophy like ethylism, but is actually an ideology of activists who are working to make extinction happen because we have to do it for the sake of the victims and the sufferers, those who are being forced into bad lives. If we don't do this and we don't make it possible with the future of the movement actually eventually carrying it out, then the victims will just be forced to suffer for the rest of time. So that's not acceptable. What's the logic behind your position? Is that it's not fair for any life, animals or people, to be forced into bad lives and extreme suffering. So you've got bad lives and then maybe some good lives, but it's not fair for the bad lives to have to exist, right? To be forced through an entire life of pure pain and misery just so that others can have a bit of fun at your expense. It's not fair for the victims. So right now, this dynamic of life existing, it only favors the lucky ones with some trivial pleasure and fun and a bit of a happiness, which they don't really need, at the expense of like children and animals and people being tortured horrifically for their entire lives. So we grow up, and as animals as well, we evolve essentially to think that that's normal and that that's acceptable and that's fine, that's just the way it is. But that's just an animalistic nature. And now we are growing out of that animalistic nature of allowing suffering. Think about it. Animals had to be okay with the existence of extreme suffering. Otherwise, they just wouldn't survive, and they wouldn't reproduce either if they were worried about their children suffering. So life had to evolve to just not care about suffering at all, so that it could be selfish, it could be cruel, it could be careless, it could reproduce without caring about its children. So survival and reproduction are irrational causes of extreme suffering. And it's because nature has irrationally made animals and humans irrational, right? It's made them irrationally obsessed with survival and reproduction. In the same way that animals can't really do philosophy, they can't come to understand how the world works in the same way that humans can. They had to rely on irrational amounts of like survival and reproduction, like motivation in their brain, right? To be born with innate motivation to survive and reproduce. And this includes all of the lots of different ways of understanding those two concepts as well. So like wanting to survive, being afraid of dying, all of these other things, that there's essentially loads of things that life has evolved, again, like being afraid of death, wanting to live, enjoying life, or being afraid of suffering. So there's dozens, if not hundreds of things that life has evolved, which all directly support survival and reproduction. And all of these things are irrational. So these are things that are forced into the brain in order, like a wind-up toy. So it's like winding it up and it will just go and survive and reproduce. It doesn't have to think about it because it's already in the brain. It has hormones and motivators and desires and needs, bodily needs as well, that it will be made to suffer if it doesn't fulfill those needs. So yeah, they're not, people aren't, well, animals definitely aren't, rationally choosing, thinking about all of this stuff. They just, it's like wind up and go. That's how evolution works, and that's how brain biology works, right? They don't have to decide to survive and reproduce. They just want to irrationally for no apparent reason. Well, the reason is because their brains are making them want to do it. Their bodies are making them want to do it. And so they don't have to even think about it. The brain already has everything it needs to make them do it. They don't need to understand it fully. And it's the same with humans. So they just automatically accept that life existing is a good thing, surviving is a good thing, reproducing is a good thing. Whereas actually, those three things are all factually incorrect. Life existing is a bad thing because it's unfair to the victims. Surviving is a bad thing because you end up suffering terribly in an unacceptable way where you would be better off not existing. And yeah, it might not happen to you, but it does happen to others, so that's not fair. And obviously reproduction just forces others to suffer terribly as well. So all of these natural things that people accept and animals accept in the same way are actually unethical, irrational, illogical, wrong, and cause extremely horrific, unethical harm to victims for trivial pleasure of the lucky ones, right? It's an evil dynamic in the same way that lions eating their prey is sort of an evil dynamic, really, right? It's not fair for the victims. life existing and bad lives existing is not fair. It's not fair for the victims. So yeah, everyone is effectively born with this acceptance of life existing, and they, approve of it, and they're also educated to that it's normal and acceptable. So they're indoctrinated into it, and they're also not rational enough to think for themselves and to break out of this system, right? The societal system and the genetic system, which also controls them. So extinctionists are people that essentially have genetic mutations or have evolved essentially to have higher levels of rationality and empathy. And so this helps us break out of the system of being irrationally forced to support and approve of survival and reproduction and life existing, right? Irrational things which cause harm. So we've understood that actually it's wrong, right? We've actually rationally come to overcome those inbuilt motivations and attitudes, essentially, the animalistic nature, whereas everyone else is still completely stuck in that animalistic nature, which directly makes them and is connected to being fundamentally irrational. So their animalistic nature, which completely ignores and allows suffering, is irrational, and all of the attitudes around it are completely irrational as well, like being afraid of the afterlife, thinking that life has to exist, that joy and beauty are somehow more important than prevention of cruelty. So, yeah, who the hell am I? Well, my name is James. I'm an activist for the pro-extinction movement. I've been an activist in the movement for just over a year now. And yeah, I've been growing social media channels along with the rest of the movement. So we have dozens of activists around the world, and we're growing globally every day. People are going on the streets and doing large-scale protests for total extinction, calling for the end of all suffering, to grow the movement. So we are growing the movement with activism until we have enough people to start running the world ethically and to start carrying out the end of animal suffering before we move on to human suffering. Just a Chill Guy says he just dodges questions and talks in circles. Okay, great. Well, let us know what question you have, and we'll answer it. So, in terms of dodging questions, this is something I really like to talk about. I think it's a really important thing to not dodge questions and to be called out if you do dodge questions. So, I actually encourage everyone in the chat to ask me questions and to call me out if I dodge a question. But don't just call me out if I dodge a question. Tell me what the question is so that I can answer it. Otherwise, your comment is effectively useless. But I do want to answer every question that you guys have. So let us know in the chat what you want me to talk about, what topics you want me to cover. Am I a Christian? No, I'm an atheist, and our movement is atheistic. In fact, we don't actually allow people to represent the movement or to join the movement unless they are atheistic, because rationality is a requirement for joining our movement. Okay, so I'm sorry if I've missed your question, right? I will try to answer it now. So I've had chronic pain for 9 years, but I don't want to die. I've found meaning in life. So what makes you think that you have a say on my life and have more valid judgment? So in terms of your life, the thing is that essentially it's irrational to want to keep living. And we can actually prove this, right? This is actually a fact. So, yeah, most people have not come to understand that because they are irrational, whereas extinctionists have a genetic mutation which makes us more rational, right? Gives us a higher capacity for rationality, which allows us to break out of just irrationally supporting survival and reproduction. So you're saying that your survival is more important than the end of all suffering, which it isn't, right? Obviously. And in terms of, why shouldn't we allow life or people like yourself to carry on? Well, the answer is that effectively it wouldn't be fair because essentially we have to choose between allowing to let you suffer terribly in unacceptable ways or preventing that and making you safe from suffering terribly. Now, most people, again, irrationally are incapable of considering the risk of suffering. And as a result, a direct result of being incapable of comprehending suffering itself and the severity of it and everything else that goes along with it, that incapacity, that inability to understand suffering rationally is what makes people want to survive. Well, it's part of what makes people want to survive. It's an essential part. So it is irrational, and the rational understanding, if people were rational, then they would essentially come to the exact same conclusion, but they're not capable of making rational or responsible decisions for themselves or others because they've evolved to do so, right? If they were capable of making responsible decisions, then they would have gone extinct, right? Because they wouldn't, like for example, most, sea turtles have 200 kids and, only one survives, right? The rest get eaten alive as babies. So that inability to understand the extreme suffering, the extreme cruelty, horrifically unacceptable and unfair suffering that most of life is forced into, that is what allows life to continue existing, essentially. It is the incomprehension, the inability to understand how bad suffering is. And life specifically evolved to be incapable of understanding how bad suffering is, because otherwise it simply wouldn't want to survive and it wouldn't want to reproduce either. So, again, it's only irrationality which keeps people in that animalistic nature. Extinctionists have effectively evolved out of it, and we can now understand how the world actually works. We can understand how suffering actually works. We can understand ethics and morality. So we have higher rationality, higher ability to understand things, right? Okay, so this guy who was accusing me of dodging his question, let's try and answer everything he said, because why not? But I understand that my condition is a consequence of existence. Somebody has to live how I live. Well, why? And I'm still happy to take part in life. Yeah, but that's irrational, right? So the rational thing to do is to favor the total safety of non-existence over the infinite danger of living and being alive, effectively. So that is the rational position, the correct and logical position, right? Which people are not capable of coming to and have evolved specifically to be incapable of coming to. So everyone has evolved to be completely incorrect, and that allowing suffering is totally cool for themselves and others, right? So it's a completely irrational, illogical, animalistic nature, and extinctionists have evolved out of it. Humanity is starting to evolve out of it. So more and more people are supporting extinction and the end of all suffering, evolving out of their animalistic nature and realizing that suffering isn't acceptable for themselves or for others. Now, why do extinctionists continue to live? It's so that we can work towards the maximum prevention of suffering possible, right? If we just took care of our own suffering, then that does nothing to end suffering for others. So we want to work intelligently towards a world with no suffering. So towards a universe with no life and no possibility of life ever again, or as close to that as we can get, even if it's just Earth. So we do peaceful activism, grow the movement, take over the world, start doing animal extinction, research if we can go beyond Earth, what the maximum prevention of suffering is that we can do. And as soon as we no longer need humanity, there's nothing for it to do, that's when humanity will be free of suffering, right? We can finally make humanity free from suffering as well with extinction. So if we make extinction optional, then people will suffer horrifically, and we care about them too much to allow that to happen, right? Or they could suffer horrifically, and it's not worth the risk. That there's nothing that they could do with their lives that would make it worth it, essentially. It's just trivial pleasure, survival, at the expense of your own safety and the safety of others. So if we let people choose extinction or not, then they could suffer terribly themselves in a way that we cannot accept, or they could cause others to suffer terribly in unacceptable ways, or they could reproduce and continue the cycle of suffering forever, which they probably would do. So that's why we have to use force to defend the victims of suffering, to defend life itself from having to suffer, from having to exist, from having to be born. And the universe, unfortunately, is effectively like a hell which just generates victims and forces them into hell and to suffer. So life starts generating in the world, and it's just forced into existence and forced to suffer the worst horrors, the worst pain that this world has to offer, and only the very few benefit from this, but it's not fair. So yeah, the allowance of suffering is just a completely animalistic mentality that we are now evolving out of and becoming more rational. And the thing is that trying to make sense of life existing, right, trying to make sense of a world where there is life and there is extreme suffering, you can't make sense out of it, right? It doesn't make sense to allow extreme suffering, and you end up just causing extreme problems and, nightmares and tragedies. And so people just try and rationalize all of the suffering and say, well, they probably go to heaven, right? Which defends their suffering, right? Puts them into more suffering by excusing it. Okay. So, or, well, what if they want to live, right? So that it's just excuse after excuse for why life should exist and suffer, when actually we should just be preventing it from having to exist and suffer. Life should never exist without certainty of safety, otherwise it is by default in infinite danger, and the unlucky ones will pay the ultimate price, and it's just not fair to them. Yeah, so again, we are encouraging everyone to join the Discord. The link is right here. And you can join straight onto the stream and debate with me, or ask me any questions, or even have a discussion. Tell us if you support the movement, if you want to start doing activism, if you want advice on how to make videos to grow the movement, things like that, anything like that. Even if you want to just come and chill for a bit, that's fine too, as we continue to grow the channel. And again, I'm hoping that eventually the channel will get pretty big, like I did on TikTok, 27k followers. And I am getting new subscribers every day since I've been streaming on this channel, so it is growing. Okay, let's go back to the comments, see if we have any questions. I mean, there's as much or more of an argument for objective morality as there is for materialism. Okay. If you think suffering is so bad, then you believe in objective morality, which means euthanizing everyone is bad because joy could exist and good is better than bad. No, that's just childish, right? That's a completely irrational, insane way of essentially. I mean, all of these things, all they end up doing is just defending suffering effectively. So, all of these completely irrational comments in the chat that just don't make any sense, effectively, because they are nature slaves, right? They are irrationally enslaved to support and defend survival and reproduction and life existing, even though it's completely irrational. But they have to do it even though there's no good arguments for it, which is why they end up just saying completely insane things, right? There is no rational argument against extinction, and they're not producing any in the chat. So guys, look, put it in the chat now. Drop it in the chat. Drop your best argument against extinction, and I'll try and cover it for you. His voice puts me to sleep. He should read stories. Yeah, okay, we could do that. Now, when we actually get some debates going, it will get more exciting. And again, I encourage everyone to join and debate me live right now. If you type this into your Chrome or Safari, it will take you straight in, and we can get the debate going immediately. You need to grow up, not the channel. Okay, well, tell me why extinction would be wrong. This is a teenager philosophy. Again, no logic detected. So these are just, very weak attacks against the ideology of extinctionism. And that's all you'll ever see, is just weak attacks, weak attacks. No one will ever actually produce anything of significance or reason, anything that you can really, well, sometimes they'll give you an argument, but it's very rare, right? Most of their comments are just like level 1 comments, essentially, right? Level 1 beginner comments, 0 level of rationality or anything. For example, this is a teenager philosophy, okay, right? It's not engaging with anything that is actually going on here. Let's see what else. Pain isn't categorically absolutely bad. So that just means that we should just allow like child abuse and stuff. Okay, no, that's just silly, not an argument. Let's see. I mean, there's If you think suffering is so bad, blah, blah, blah. If you're worried with general suffering, are you even concerned about someone hearing your messages and unaliving themselves? That would cause immense suffering in their families and friends. Well, unfortunately, we do have to advocate for the correct thing, the rational thing, and the truth for the sake of the much worse off victims. So you're defending, family members having to grieve. And by the way, we're against suicide, and we are constantly telling everyone that, right? Reminding them. And we encourage people to work towards the end of all suffering, not just your own. But in terms of, could there be collateral damage? Yeah, it's possible. But it's essentially nothing compared to the actual damage going on already, which is much worse in much greater volumes. So we can't allow all of that just because it might cause some suffering. So yeah, the pro-extinction movement has always been transparent with the fact that we are, um, prepared to cause suffering if we have to, for the sake of ending all suffering. Because effectively, if you're not prepared to cause any suffering at all in the pursuit of ending all suffering, then you will never end all suffering and you allow the greater of two evils. So that's how it works, guys, right? Okay, let's get back to the chat. But again, yeah, we don't want anyone to unalive anyone, including themselves. And we strictly advocate for peaceful activism. We want humanity to stay strong, to keep reproducing, so that we can actually work together to end all animal suffering and not human suffering. So human suffering is not our priority right now. It's animal suffering. They can't help themselves. They can't go extinct unless we help them. Okay, let's see if we have any interesting comment. If you're an atheist, you should know there is no cosmic justice, and yet such isn't mutually exclusive with utility in life. It's just gibberish, guys, right? Cosmic justice, utility, mutually, it's just gibberish. Philosophy is bad for you, but also I think it's more than that. These guys are just irrational, effectively. And look, people can be rational when it comes to simple things like 1 + 1 = 2. But effectively, they are specifically made to be irrational when it comes to understanding things like survival and reproduction, ethics and morality, what's right and wrong, working towards a better world. So most people live as animals do in an individualistic sense. So they're effectively on their own, right? They're not really part of anything. They're not part of a movement. They're not part of an organization. They might have their family, but that's it. And so in that sense, you're effectively on your own. You're just living for yourself. Whereas extinctionists are people, activists, right? Pretty much, well, most of our activists, not all of them, but a lot of them at least, were activists before joining the pro-extinction movement. So many of our activists, many of our activists were activists for veganism, for antinatalism, for things like that. And we all upgraded to extinctionism, understanding that actually it is much more correct, much more rational, and much more important, effectively. So instead of just reducing suffering, we have to work towards the end of all of it, the permanent end. All right, let's see. Getting back to the chat. This is a mess. Okay, no logic detected. He wants all life to stop. It's that we want life to be safe from suffering, and extinction is the only way to do it. So that's why we're doing peaceful activism to work towards making it possible in the future. I feel it's pretty irrational to want extinction. Again, no argument offered at all, nothing to work with there. It's like saying, I disagree. Well, it's like, okay, good for you. All right, maybe it's the people who are not suffering causing the suffering. The rich people, for example. No. Most suffering in the world is animals eating each other alive and starving to death. And there's also plenty of suffering which isn't caused by rich people. Diseases, abuse, injuries, disability, brain damage, chronic pain. How do you suggest setting up the system? So the movement already exists. It already has lots of structure and organization, servers. We have policies, we have principles, procedures. So, we have lots of people in the pro-extinction movement. It's an official organization. It's not a meme or teenager sort of cringe organization or anything like that. The problem of suffering existing in the world and bad lives existing is the biggest problem, the most serious and important and the worst problem possible. And essentially, we can either choose to allow all of the extreme cruelty and terrible lives of pure hell, or we can help the victims, right? So we can either choose the happy people at the expense of innocent individuals being tortured for their entire life, or we can make it so that nobody is forced into a life of torture ever again. And there Yeah, this microphone is really annoying. I might have to send it back, or it could be this USB lead. I'm not sure which one it is. It's one of the two. Anyway, I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so again, we're really hoping to get people joining the Discord and debating. Come on, prove yourself, show your stones, join the Discord and debate me live right now. Okay, so in the meantime, we can do some debates with AI potentially. Let's see. Are there any interesting AIs we can talk to? What about DeepSeek? Does that have like a voice chat mode? Oh wow, the website's terrible. Forget that. Yeah, let's just go back to the comments. The mic's fine. I don't want to hear your nonsense. Okay, well, why don't you just tell us why it's nonsense instead? How exactly do you want us to do our part in making sure every animal species go extinct? Well, that's a great question. So we have to do it scientifically. So we grow the movement with peaceful activism until we can take over the world and start running it ethically and doing extinction, researching extinction, carrying it out, right, for animals. So there's some animals where it will be very easy to deal with them, right? Like we can ban the ownership of pets. That's one thing that we will be doing, right? So that there's no more animal abuse, no more pets suffering terribly, just so that some lucky pets can have a good life. And equally, we'll be working to abolish animal agriculture so that there are no animals being exploited for their bodies. And equally, we'll be working towards wildlife abolition of suffering as well, working towards and making the world as uninhabitable as possible effectively so that life never develops, never exists, and never suffers terribly. So, again, if we were in hell, right, and the only way to prevent all of the victims from being tortured was to do extinction, then it would be the right thing to do. And if there's a few lucky people in hell that are actually enjoying it, then it's not right to allow all of the suffering to carry on just for their sake, right? So that is effectively the situation that we're in. And it is wrong to allow all of the suffering to continue. And everyone is fine to just allow it and, make jokes about it. But we're actually taking it seriously and we are not going to allow the suffering. So the only correct thing, like the logical conclusion of ethics and morality, and if you want to do the right thing, is to work towards the maximum prevention of suffering. Essentially, the maximum providing of safety that we can achieve, right? Working to make the world as safe as possible is essentially what we want to do, so that there is no suffering, no victims, right? That's the most important thing. Happy lives existing, happiness doesn't matter, right? That's completely irrelevant because it comes only at the expense of victimization, right? So people are struggling to understand that, like, oh, what about happiness and good lives? Well, they completely fail to understand that it comes at an unacceptable price, right? It can't just exist um, in a moral vacuum, right? That's not the way it works. So still waiting for people to join the Discord. Looks like someone's just joined. Let's see if they want to join into a voice channel. And everyone else, yeah, get yourself into the Discord, get yourself debating. We'll hear your thoughts. And in the meantime, going back to the comments. So, yeah, join the Discord, guys. Seriously, even if you just want to chat, discuss, ask any questions, or if you do want to have a proper debate, let's get into it. Let's see if you can explain why extinction would be wrong. Now, for most people, essentially, they just end up explaining that they don't like the idea because they just want to keep living. And so they struggle to explain why it would actually be wrong for the world, right? They struggle to produce good arguments, like good logical arguments, and that's what I want people to try and do. Right? I want people to try and actually think about this properly, think it through. Really try and come up with some good counter arguments. Now, the thing is that there aren't any. So ideally, try and think of how it's actually correct. Now, for most people, again, one of the main things preventing them from seeing that extinction is actually the correct thing is their inability to understand how bad suffering is. And so that's why they end up, smoking themselves to death or just clinging to life and then ending up suffering terribly as a result. In unacceptable ways where you wouldn't want to live like that, you would be better off not existing. Okay, we've got someone in the voice channel. Hello, do you want to come on? Do you want to unmute yourself? We've got Thoughtology. Hello.
Oh, hi there. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Maybe we could set up a time to have a more formal debate if that's more your kind of thing. But I was just more kind of curious in your position because honestly, I haven't heard much about it, so
Yeah.
wanted to kind of learn more.
Yeah, so it's about not allowing suffering and doing the maximum that we can to that end. So the maximum safety that we can provide, the maximum prevention of bad lives and suffering that we can do. Now, if there were any other way to end all suffering other than extinction, then maybe would be something to consider. But effectively, there is actually no way, it's actually impossible, even theoretically, to make it safe for life to exist unless you have omniscience. Then you can't actually guarantee that there's full safety. You can't say with 100% certainty that life will be safe. And so, without omniscience, there will always be infinite unknowns, infinite different ways that things could go infinitely wrong. And so,
Where do you stand on metaethics?
like
Are you a moral realist?
we don't really subscribe to any of those things. We prefer to just call ourselves extinctionists, rational, empathetic
Right,
people.
but your opinion is that this is a good thing, right? That's a
Yeah,
moral claim. So do you think that there's moral claims that are true or false? And where do you think, are you a utilitarian?
yeah.
Do you
We
believe in a
we so
categorical imperative?
we don't rely on any of those things essentially. So those are old ways of thinking. We use newer, better ways of thinking, such as just working on ethics, essentially. So all of our activists are people that have decided that we need to do something to make the world a better place. What is the right thing to do? And logically, we have come to the conclusion that extinction is the correct and fair thing to do.
Right, but presumably you're saying something along the lines of suffering is bad and extinction would prevent suffering,
Yeah.
therefore extinctionism is good. Like if you were to put it into like a standard
Well, I
logical
mean, there's
syllogism, something
no.
like
I
that,
mean,
right?
I wouldn't simplify it to just that, right? That's the problem with that way of thinking is that you end up oversimplifying it and tripping over yourself with restrictive rules essentially. So we can the better way to do it is to just talk it through naturally and try to just talk normally and think normally instead of appealing to abstract rules effectively. So that's the better way to do it. So I would suggest we just, we can just discuss it essentially, and it will come out much more naturally. So, do you think it's that we should allow all of the suffering in the world? Do you think there's a better way to prevent it other than suffering, other than extinction? Sorry.
I do lean towards that opinion, but I'm just kind of trying to understand your your foundational philosophy and kind of how it intersects, and then I can ask some better questions to kind of maybe change your mind and kind of like flesh out the view a bit more. Like, do you believe in God?
No, our movement is strictly atheistic. We don't allow religious people in. But I would say that for most of our activists, including myself, we support this ideology because we have higher levels of empathy, which allow us to actually understand suffering in a more accurate way and to understand extreme suffering in a more accurate way, which most people actually struggle to comprehend and end up as a result, not understanding how bad it is and therefore treating it in the incorrect, wrong way. They end up trivializing it. They're not able to actually value it correctly or accurately. And they've evolved specifically to do that. So, extinctionists are people that feel for the victims of the world, understand how bad and unacceptable their suffering is in an accurate, rational way, which again, most people are not capable of doing because they've evolved to being capable of doing it. And so it's our empathy for the victims. It's also knowing that this is actually logically the correct thing to do as well. So it's empathetic and rational, both things which most people are actually completely lacking in.
Yeah, okay, that's that's fair. Okay, I respect your view on that. I'm just like I haven't written anything down on this, so like it's some just my thoughts aren't going to come out like super clearly. But could you imagine like a possible world where there is much more happiness or some sort of equivalent term than the amount of suffering? Like, let's say, for example, we lived in a world where every human's basic needs were met. Everyone could pursue their hobbies to their fullest, live with their family as much as possible. Maybe people didn't even die. Maybe like consciousness could be separated and people could never lose their loved ones, and we were able to minimize like almost every possible type of suffering. Or even, for example, let's say we invent some sort of gas that makes
Yeah,
every animal on earth unable to feel pain or
yeah.
something along those
So
lines, or allows them to hold on, just let me finish my thought. Take energy from the sun, for example, so they didn't have to kill each other. If you were to remove almost every type of suffering apart from like basic, like you touch a hot stove you get hurt, right? Seems to be crucial to our evolutionary history. If we were to live in like that sort of possible world, would you change your mind, or is it just the fact that you don't think that type of world would ever be possible?
again, the only standard that would be acceptable for our movement to allow life to exist is if there's certainty of safety, and that would require omniscience by our understanding. And so anything less than that, we would still go with extinction, because even in a perfect world, if it can still go infinitely wrong in infinite different ways, then it's not right to allow that, essentially. So yeah, most people would say, "Oh wow, all the problems are solved now," um, but it's if you have to think of the victims essentially, if it goes wrong, right? If it's possible for it to go wrong, then it's not acceptable, essentially. So
Okay,
only
so
certainty of safety.
theoretically, if we were living on a planet and like every single person was living their happiest, fullest life, never lost a loved one, enjoyed every great peak of life, and we solved every single problem known to man, except there was a single knife that was flying through the universe. That there was a 1 in a 10 billionth chance that at some point that knife may come and possibly not even kill but hurt a single person on the planet. You would consider that planet not worth living on. You would prefer a world where that
Well, the thing
world
is,
didn't exist.
is the thing is that that's not a valid hypothetical, because, as I was
Okay, well,
explaining,
we can argue that, but this is the point I'm trying to get at. That
well,
it seems
yeah,
like
well, let me
there
explain
is an
then. So
underlying.
I would say
Okay.
it's a invalid hypothetical because you've ignored what I was just explaining, which is that unless you can provide certainty of safety, then there is no in between, effectively. So you would, if the omniscience is going to say, right, someone will be stabbed and they'll be fine or something, then maybe it would be okay. But again, without that omniscience, you can't provide any sort of safety or guarantee, and anything could happen, much worse things than a knife flying around.
Right. I'm just trying to narrow it down a bit to like think of like, if we lived like if you're a naturalist and you don't believe in God and you think like things are kind of predetermined, then theoretically there could be a world where there is, almost no suffering whatsoever.
Yeah, but
I'm just taking it to I'm just taking it to the extremes to kind of emphasize, get you to agree that at least one possible world would be worth living in,
well,
and then we can say that,
we
hey,
still
maybe
wouldn't
that there's
support it.
more than just the one.
We still wouldn't support it because we prioritize the maximum prevention of suffering possible and the maximum responsibility of providing safety essentially. So
So
we
absolutely
should never compromise on that safety. We should never
any
compromise on it.
amount of suffering at all, even this,
But
getting a
again,
paper cut.
it's
But sorry,
only
if I could
you
just
can't limit it though.
elaborate.
You can't limit it. That's the point.
Okay.
How can you limit it without omniscience? You can't guarantee that.
Well, I'm not saying omniscience, but I'm saying like clearly the world that we're living in now is better than it was, 2,000 years ago. Like we do, I mean, in most aspects, right? We don't tend to just randomly die from like poisoned water. I mean, well, we're pretty lucky here in the West, right? That, things happen, you know, a lot of things we don't know about and don't hear about, and that's honestly part of the best reason not to believe in God. But just stepping it back and looking at it from your like point of view, like I could imagine things are going in a better direction and that there's sort of peaks of well-being that outweigh, the lower, parts of our suffering, our
Well,
ability to
well,
feel pain, right?
no, I would say again that that's just a fantasy, right? That's what you want to exist, even though it's not actually realistic. So again,
Yeah, it may not
you
be
can't limit
realistic.
suffering. So
I would have
the
to
risk of
discuss
suffering
that.
is infinite, effectively. Again, you can't actually control it unless you can control everything.
It
And
just seems like to me, like, yeah, okay, I would agree. Like, if this world was actually hell, then extinctionism
well,
would be the best
it is for the
philosophy.
victims. For the victims, it is.
hmm I don't think it is for the vast majority of people. I mean, hell
Well,
is usually described as
the
eternal
majority of the population
hellfire, right?
is animals,
Mm,
right? And they suffer terribly. They're just being eaten alive, starving to death in nature. And you're making essentially an argument that for the majority, if the majority of humans are okay, then it doesn't matter how badly the minority suffers, which is
No,
effectively
no.
evil,
My
right?
point was that hell is eternal. It's eternal suffering, right? No animal. I mean, especially if you don't
But
believe in an
suffering
afterlife.
isn't more
No
acceptable
animal or
just because
person
it's not
is.
eternal, right? Just because it's not eternal doesn't make it
No,
okay.
but surely eternal is worse. This is like
Yeah,
I'm
it
not.
doesn't make it okay. It's not a good argument,
It,
right?
did
That
I
doesn't
ever
make
say it
child
was? Hold
abuse
on,
isn't
hold on.
okay now just because it's not eternal,
One
right?
second.
It could go on for all of eternity, though. It could keep happening.
I've been your age as well. I know, like, I know what you're trying to do here.
Yeah,
But
look,
just
if you
hear me
don't
out.
want to,
I'm
if
not
you,
saying
I'm
it's
listening to you.
worse.
Say what you want to say.
Okay, so I'm not saying that it's okay if you want to rewind or replay anything. I never said that the tremendous
Well, you
sufferings that we
did. You did
experience here on
say it
Earth
would
are
be worth it.
okay.
You said it would be worth it, though. So that's you want to have your
Well,
cake and eat it.
I'm making
You want to have your
I'm
cake and
making
eat
an
it. You want to
argument.
say it's not okay, but we should accept it. So that's having your cake and eating it. It's like a slave owner saying slavery's not okay, but I'm still going to have slaves. So most people make this same mistake where they think they can say, yeah, all of this extreme suffering, I don't accept it, I don't support it, it is unacceptable, but we should allow it as long as that's the price for life to continue existing. So they want to have their cake and eat it, which is irrational.
Yeah, I understand the point you're making. With hell, I was just trying to make the point that, like I could agree, like I don't agree that this world is so bad. I'm not convinced of your position
For
yet,
who? For
obviously,
who?
right?
For who?
For me personally,
So that's it. I literally called this, right? I literally called this before you joined the call for the debate that people
that
literally
people are
try
it's
to
going to
dis
boil down to someone saying that they just enjoy their life more.
no,
I'm trying to like
let me talk. So
actually make a
I'm not
little bit of an
finished. I'm not
argument and
finished.
make
I'm not
somewhere.
finished. Right?
Okay.
That people will try and decide what's right and wrong for the world based on their own desires for their own life, and you've literally just admitted it
Okay, well,
perfectly.
here's the
That
thing.
we should
Every
allow
single
suffering
one of
because
our
I'm happy.
intuitions, all of our intuitions, including the idea that you're talking to somebody right now, or that there's an external world, is going to come from your personal experience of it, right? So I'm telling you, like I'm not convinced. My life isn't so horrible. Now,
Again,
that
so
isn't to
what
say
about
that there
others? What
aren't
about
some people
others?
that could. Yeah, yeah, okay. So that's an argument, and I'm happy to debate
But
it
your
with
life
you.
could also become terrible.
Yeah, it could, and maybe
So that's
I
not
would want
acceptable either.
to
That's not acceptable either.
kill. No, it's not. No.
We
Like I
can't
said, I'm
accept
not
that. If your
some.
life becomes terrible, we can't accept that. We can't allow that to happen to you, and we won't.
Right. I guess what I'm trying to say is like, for example, with hell, if we could not try to get too sidetracked, with hell, there's no chance of things getting better, and it's eternal, right? And now it's a sliding scale from that all the way to like a sort of imagined heaven. Now, in this heaven, we didn't have to worry about any sort of. Now, I don't believe this place exists, right? Just like I'm right. So if you can like stick with my analogy here and try to work with it. If there was a heaven, then I hope you would admit that maybe extinctionism isn't the best philosophy.
Why?
Now, if we were in hell, I could agree that that is the best philosophy. So now I feel like
But
it's a question
but
of,
right,
well,
but
where
look,
in this
dude,
sliding scale does it stop?
we're not in hell or heaven, right? You're being irrational, right?
Yeah,
We live in the real world, in a natural world,
that's
okay?
exactly what I just
So
said,
when I'm
though. I
describing
just said I
hell,
don't believe in heaven,
yeah, good,
right?
good,
So
good, right? But
so what I'm trying to say is that the world that we live in is somewhere between a theoretical.
no, the suffering going on in the world is not theoretical, right? It's actually happening.
Yeah, did I say that the suffering was theoretical, or did I say the heaven and hell were theoretical? I feel like you're just trying to argue to like.
No, it didn't. You cut out a little bit.
Did I say that the suffering was theoretical, or did I say that the heaven and
Yeah,
hell were
you
theoretical?
cut
If
out
you
when
were
you were
listening,
saying that. I couldn't listen. You cut
okay.
out. Anyway, so yeah, look, let's stop talking about heaven and hell because they don't exist, right? When I'm talking about lives of pure hell, right, you should be able to understand that we're applying this to the real world as a description of what is happening to these victims and saying that just because their suffering doesn't go on for all eternity, it makes it okay. That's completely insane.
Right. So that's obviously not what I'm saying.
You did say
To
that several
clarify,
times. You did say, well, it doesn't go on forever, so it's better.
right.
Those were your words.
Okay. Do you not agree that
So did you forget that you said that?
suffering? Do you not agree that suffering for 1 hour is worse or better than suffering for 1 day? Like, do
This
you
has got
like?
nothing
I'm
to
just
do
trying to
with
like.
this has got nothing to do with allowing child abuse and animal abuse in the world.
Okay, I don't support any of those things. I
Well, you
think
do
you
though.
know that as well.
You do,
Okay.
right? Because the only way to prevent those completely is with extinction. So unless you're supporting making those things impossible and you're saying, "Oh, we shouldn't make those things impossible." You have no right to say that you don't support those things. Again, you want to have your cake and eat it. You want to be a good person while supporting extreme suffering.
Right. So yeah, I mean the question that I'm trying to figure out is whether the joys and well-being that we can experience in this life, it could possibly outweigh the amount of suffering. I agree
No.
that there's a tremendous amount of suffering
So
and
no.
that suffering is
Yeah, the
evil.
answer is no,
Okay.
basically. So there's no amount of happiness that
Okay.
can justify extreme cruelty.
All right.
And
So
so
it's
so we have to have a policy of not allowing it, a zero tolerance policy. Otherwise, people like you will end up just supporting all of this extreme suffering just because it produces some lucky ones at the expense of the victims. So we have to have a completely zero tolerance policy. Right now, life is just growing and causing suffering. We need to do the maximum prevention of that. Otherwise, the victims will suffer terribly. And yeah, work towards extinction.
right. Okay. Yeah, that helps kind of flesh out your position a bit more. I kind of understand the point you're trying to make. Now, what ends would you go to achieve that? Like, if you had to cause a
Anything,
tremendous
whatever.
amount of
Yeah.
suffering.
Well, there's no amount of
Okay.
suffering. It's impossible to cause more suffering with extinction than it prevents, basically.
So, like, theoretically, every one of us should go and kill as many other people as possible.
No, as I've said many times on this stream, we're against vigilante action. We support doing peaceful activism so that we can work towards a pro extinction government and then start to do animal extinction in a scientific and organized
Like,
way.
prevent people from having kids, like, and other things like that,
Well,
like peace.
we
Like,
need humanity to keep reproducing temporarily until we complete animal extinction, right? Otherwise, they will keep suffering forever and probably evolve back into humans as well. Um, so, human extinction will be last essentially because we're the only ones that can do extinction for others and who can make the world uninhabitable as well. So, we're working towards the most vast and thorough extinction possible, which the best case scenario would be to make the entire universe permanently uninhabitable. But
If you were to come across a button that would like instantly disable like every any chance or possibility of life existing, like not just oxygen but anything that could
yeah,
evolve
it's
into
a
intelligent life,
there's an
you would switch
existing
that, correct?
there's an existing thought experiment. It's very very common and commonly used in these circles. It's called the red button. So would you push the red button and delete the universe, right? Would you get rid of the universe, all of the happiness gone but all of the suffering gone forever? And yeah, it is the right thing to do, because otherwise you're making all of the victims be tortured just so that others can be happy, and it's not fair.
Yeah,
But that
okay.
that is a good way to actually think about this. It's a very helpful thought experiment. It does really simplify it down to, yeah, what would you choose? Keep the suffering for the happiness, or save the victims even if it means no happiness? So in a sense, it's one of the most difficult moral decisions for people to make, right? It's the correct thing, but it's also the most difficult thing, because you have to give up everything to do the right thing, essentially.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm just working off my intuitions, so I'm sorry if
It's okay.
I
And
come
to be
across as
honest,
someone that's trying to defend horrible things. Like I'm just trying to
yeah,
inform myself and like come
what
to a conclusion, right? So I respect you like
funnily
chatting with me.
enough about that, the thing is, we've actually evolved to do that. So when I'm saying that we've evolved to struggle to think about these things, it makes people and myself end up being irrational and asking what are in effect embarrassing questions sometimes. Now, I'm not saying that you've been embarrassing, but when I joined the movement, it took me a few months of asking stupid questions, sometimes that I was afraid to ask. Um, but that's the only way to learn. And so I do understand
I
that.
just
And
I don't I believe that almost any position in philosophy is like you should be so confident about that you're saying that certain questions, unless you're like literally using
it's
certain
not philosophy.
terminology
So
wrong.
this isn't philosophy. That's where it's different. This is ideology. It's a big difference. So philosophy is just, let's think about it for fun, whereas ideology and activism is, let's make it happen.
Okay, yeah, I respect that you're on,
So it's
yeah,
ethics. So
the
effectively,
activism side. Sure, but there's underlying philosophy to what you're saying. There's certain like moral and truth claims that are being assumed
yeah.
as like a sort of bedrock, right? So that's
Well,
what I'm kind of getting at.
we would really say that ethics is the most important thing. There's no point in doing philosophy just for fun. It has to be for a good reason. And so ethics
Hmm.
is like the superior version. It's the upgrade from philosophy, effectively.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I would agree with that because I'd
Well, for
say we need to
activists, it
get
is. For
into.
people that want to do the right thing for the world, it absolutely is. Ethics is
Right.
almost everything. Sure, there's some room for philosophy, yeah, but
Yeah, I
the
mean,
more the
okay,
more
so
important thing for us is the
ethics
ethics.
is a branch of philosophy, but I'm saying like other things like metaphysics are also going to
Well, we
be
disagree with that, right?
potentially come into
Ethics is
play.
a way to run the world. It's not, so people always want to glorify philosophy, but again, we need to move beyond philosophy, right? And to actually run the world ethically, which is the
Maybe we
opposite,
just mean
opposite
different
of
things
philosophy.
by
That's
philosophy,
the well,
like we
that's the
have
opposite of
different
philosophy.
terminology, like for
Um,
what philosophy means. I mean,
yeah. I mean,
for
for
me,
sure.
it's just, yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
we
asking
think about it differently.
questions and trying to come to the right. Okay, yeah, that's respectable. I'm not going to
And
say
well,
that
like you said, yeah,
that's wrong.
philosophy is
So,
asking questions and coming to what conclusions and whatnot, but that's doesn't help anyone, right? So we have to actually do
okay,
activism. And
well, I'm
the thing is
thinking.
that when I say that ethics is superior, it's because when you're actually trying to actively help the world and decide what's right for it so that we can implement it, then you actually have an obligation to take things seriously, and it produces just more important results, essentially more rational results, because you have to take it seriously instead of just philosophy for fun. You end up not taking it seriously, and that's just a
Yeah,
fact.
it kind of reminds me of what the Karl Marx quote about the point of philosophy. I'm not even remembering it now, but the point is to change the world, not just to talk about it, right? But um, what was the other kind of? Oh, there was another kind of path I wanted to go down. I don't know if you have other callers you want to hop in, but um, there's something
uh
else I was going to kind of ask relating to your philosophy.
yeah, again, we would call it an ideology, not a philosophy. We're actually
Okay,
very
sure.
against, we're
All right.
against
I'm
calling it a
not.
philosophy. because
Okay, I'm sorry
that
about that.
encourages it to just be an idea, whereas the victims need action. They need activism, right? So activism is saying I'm actually, prepared to die to help the victims, whereas philosophy is I'm going to sit at home and think about it and then not do anything about it.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I just don't. That's not kind of like how I learned about it. Like if I would say like, hey, like a black man and a white man are like awaiting trial. And you're gonna say, oh, we need the activism to, black people and white people should have the same fair trial. And I say, oh, yes, I agree because I have a Rawlsian philosophy towards ethics of the veil of ignorance or something along those lines.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that that person is like playing down the need for the activism. They're
yeah.
just breaking it
I
down
mean,
to a sort of more better bedrock, philosophical
the
starting
thing,
point where you can
the
kind of
problem
flesh
with
out the ideas a bit either easier without emotion, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that all of these things are irrational. Doing activism for veganism and any other movement is irrational, and that this is the conclusion of rational activism, right? Is to be against all suffering. Now, the difference is therefore that every other movement accepts suffering, whereas we are the only movement in the world which doesn't accept any suffering and cruelty. Right, so we want to abolish all sorts of suffering, just as slavery was abolished, whereas everyone wants to keep
Right.
continuing.
I guess the path I was going down before with the whole ethics is the extension of philosophy thing that you were going down is like I think that things like metaphysics could also be important. For example, like this is just first year philosophy stuff, right? But you're imagining that other people exist and that you're having real experiences and that your mind isn't playing a trick on you, for example. So we need to like talk about some of that. And then, for example, I'm wondering whether it would change your position if somehow you knew for certainty that God did exist and there was an afterlife and that any suffering, for example, if there was some way to know that like the amount of suffering we see is limited by God in some aspect where anytime someone's experiencing it they on the outside they appear in pain or so, I don't believe these things, right? This is ridiculous, right? But if you could show something like that where by making more people that can eventually go to heaven and heaven is so good that it outweighs what we perceive as terrible suffering, or even
Nah,
if the
look,
terrible suffering is real.
we need to get away from looking for ways to excuse and validate suffering, right? That's essentially what everyone is doing all the time. It's just
Well,
an
this
ocean
is
of
what
it.
anyone's gonna not obviously not everyone
Everyone is
agrees with
finding way.
you. I think you're
Well, look,
probably a
yeah,
very
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
minority opinion in philosophy, right? So we need to
But
kind of
that's not an
discuss.
argument, though.
Okay, so it's not an argument that there could exist an afterlife that
No,
outweighs the
no,
suffering on
no,
Earth.
no, because
Why?
I could make any sort of false claim, right? I could say, well, the flying spaghetti monster demands that we do extinction and says we have to.
Right.
So look, unless there's
Okay.
evidence of something, then we have to just assume it
I
doesn't
mean, I
exist, and that
agree
is
with you. I'm an atheist, right? But
yeah.
I'm
Well,
just trying
we
to think of
support the
like
scientific method as the responsible way to end
I'm
suffering.
just I'm a Bayesian when I approach these questions, right? So like for whatever prior probability, whatever probability there is in my mind that God doesn't exist, it's not 100%. It's maybe in the high 90s, right? But
Yeah,
I'm just trying to like
that's
say, like
understandable.
I'm just trying to start very small. Like I would have to write. I would have to like read like this is literally I just popped across this while I'm getting ready for work, right? But I would want to like create some like structured arguments and kind of like attack, right? But this is this kind of like thoughts that I've had popping up of like possible things that might give a small amount of credence towards the view that just because you sound so confident, which you should as like a podcast host, right? And you're a good speaker, right? But I'm trying
Again,
to think
I'll
of
just
like
tell you the main difference,
yeah,
right? Is again that we understand just how terrible suffering is, whereas most people are not able to think about it other than in a shallow way, which actually prevents them from understanding the full gravity and directly, specifically prevents them from taking it seriously or caring about it.
yeah,
So in the same way that a lion would have absolutely zero empathy for its victim as it's eating it, humans have the exact same disability effectively when it comes to understanding the suffering of others. And so
Mhm.
extinctionists do have a genetic mutation which gives us higher levels of empathy, which essentially corrects that irrational problem
Is
of
there research on that? I mean, I see where you're
yeah,
coming
yeah,
from. I
yeah.
understand the
I
argument you're
so I
making. You've
cover
done
it.
like
I cover it in my streams. I am researching it. I've been researching it for the last 7 years.
what percent of the population is extinctionist, and what kind of like wide, you know, double
These
blind or
these are the right
tests are
questions.
being
These are the
done?
right questions. Yeah, the population of extinctionists is tiny, and that's because life existing had to be made animalistically irrational to the nth degree, and that's what people really don't understand is the extent to which there is interference in their brain compelling them to irrationally support certain things like survival and reproduction. But it's to
Mhm.
such a massive degree, whereas they don't understand just how incredibly powerfully influenced they are by it. And so it ends
Right.
up giving them these false opinions, these incorrect
Oh.
opinions, in order to defend survival and reproduction. And we
Yeah, I mean
specifically evolved that
we're on
way.
the same page there. That's why there's a pretty common argument against naturalism that we can't really trust reason at all because that's we didn't evolve to work towards the truth. We evolved to survive, right? So,
Yeah, and so
and
now, yeah, like you asked, how many extinctionists are there that are now becoming rational humans, effectively, whereas every other human is categorically irrational. So we are becoming rational, evolving to become rational humans. But yeah, it's a very small population right now. There's essentially in the
that's why I'm
movement.
just surprised that you said there's been scientific studies
Yeah,
among
yeah, we
them.
we have scientists in the movement, like myself.
Okay, but like, have you published any? I was just curious. Like, you could be right. I'm just curious about the claim that extinctionists, by and large, like as an actual like statistical point, like not just like variance, that they have larger parts of their brain that signify empathy. Could be
Uh,
true. I don't know. They're
yeah,
just
it's empathy
curious
and
if there's.
rationality, and really, a lot of that empathy comes from the rationality, which is the ability to understand the world in a more accurate way. And so, the
Yeah.
higher capacity gives you more ability to understand things correctly until you get to a point where you actually can understand things accurately. Whereas before that, you're stuck in spirituality, religiosity, selfishness, and blaming people for things that they didn't do, all sorts of terrible things, right? And so
Mhm.
that higher ability for rationality essentially gives us more ability to understand the suffering of others, which leads to more empathy, because we most people are specifically, again, like that one of the main things that evolution has made them unable to understand is how bad suffering is and the reality of it. So
Mhm.
they when they're thinking about it, it's like, oh, maybe they go to heaven, maybe it's not that bad, maybe animals don't have consciousness, all these just
Mhm.
nonsense things, essentially.
Yeah.
And they, instead
And
of empathizing with the suffering, the tragedy of it, right? And so
yeah.
extinctionists are
And we're
people
we're
that,
kind of
we often
on this.
cry about the victims of life around the world, right? Because we understand how bad their suffering is. It does bring us to tears. Whereas for most people, it's like, oh, interesting. Let's watch the animals eating each other. That's cool, right? So
Yeah.
they don't care about the actual suffering.
Honestly, I have a lot of the same opinions and intuitions you do. And like even what I was bringing up before was just kind of like it was just like a little dialogue back and forth, and just trying to like pick apart some of the things and see where you land on them. But I do think those sort of theodicies fail. Like going back how I was tying it to God, like if God rewards you with heaven, then he's just in allowing the suffering on earth. I don't think that's actually right. And I think you make a good point about how truly horrific suffering can be. Um, I think you would like what it would boil down to is whether you're willing to risk certain types of suffering, which you're right, not only for yourself, but for other people, if the species was to exist, in order to live in the world we're living in. And like I would have to like do some more thinking on it. But I mean, I can imagine like going through. I mean, I've been through some like pretty horrible things, and I can imagine like some pretty horrible things. But in my head, and maybe I'm just like a bit hopeful, even though I am a bit I don't know, a bit of a doomer at times. I don't know what the right term is.
Yeah.
I don't know, the idea of like meeting my wife, like holding my child in my hands for my first time, like, being with my parents, doing what we love, like reminiscing on childhood memories. There's certain like feelings that are so unique and special and bring me so much joy, that obviously wouldn't exist if nothing existed or if no life existed. Um,
You see, the
and
way
the
I see
question
it is
is,
that like
yeah,
all of these happy people with their small problems, effectively, it is the way I do see it is like demons in hell saying, "Oh, what about my happiness? Basically, let's not shut down hell."
yeah, no, I just I could just think of being in I could think of like losing all of my arms, all of my legs, like I could think of being like in crippling pain. I mean, it just depends. Like I believe in assisted suicide. Like I think that there's for certain people, like if that's what they want to do, I think that's totally like their decision to make. I could imagine
Well,
being
we don't,
in,
because we think they'll make the wrong decision, and then they'll go on to suffer in a way that
I don't
we
know,
can't accept.
where are you from? I don't know. We allow it here in Canada. Maybe the rules are too strict by your opinion, but um
Well, I'm in the UK, but yeah, in terms of the thing, we just can't allow suffering at all, right? You either allow all of the suffering or you go against it and try to prevent it. And that is the reality. So, especially for wild animals, who are 99% of the population on the planet, and all of them are just being eaten alive in unacceptable, horrific ways, there's no way to even reduce their suffering. And so, again, we have a duty to do the maximum prevention of them being
I
forced
think
into
that's your
suffering.
best argument, honestly, is the amount of animal suffering because they don't experience the same sort of joys that we do, but all the science seems to point towards them, being able to experience pain and things like that. I think that's the best argument against God, at least from the problem of evil side. I think that's probably your best argument as well.
I mean, we have lots of
Um,
great arguments, but really it's
yeah,
that
I'm
we
sure.
shouldn't allow anyone to suffer just so that others can be happy.
Hmm.
Especially, and when we say that, people just think of the suffering part of that sentence as, just a bit of suffering. But whereas extinctionists actually take it fully seriously, right? So most people don't want to think that they're going to suffer at all, whereas extinctionists are capable of fully understanding the potential of extreme suffering and the true
Yeah,
nightmares that can exist and do exist, that people just want to pretend don't exist so that they can keep living in a delusion where they'll be fine and everything's fine. And really what it is, it kind of creates a fantasy bubble delusion where, yeah, the world is great, guys, everything's fine. And anything that attacks that comforting fantasy bubble delusion of, guys, there's terrible suffering going on, it could be you next, they don't want to accept it. Basically, they can't accept it, actually.
right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I'm just I'm thinking about it. How do I want to approach this the best? I'm thinking of like two different worlds, and I agree with, I understand what you're saying about like these extreme hypotheticals and other things like that.
They're not just
I'm just
hypotheticals. They're happening in real life. They're happening all the time.
No,
Think
no,
about like the
the
worst life
suffering's
ever lived.
sorry, the sufferings are happening in real life. I'm talking about the sort of hype where I was like going before with heaven
Oh,
and hell,
sorry.
or like,
Okay, got you. Got you.
yeah, yeah. So like, I could think of a hypothetical where every person that feels the way you do, that like if there was some sort of level of suffering that we could like scientifically prove that's like, okay, this amount is worth living and this amount isn't. Like, I don't know what your life is, but like if you like everything else was going great in your life, you had a loving wife and kids that were loyal to you, and you lived a
But
happy life and you had money, but your hand got cut off in an accident, you'd probably want to keep living. Now, I understand your point is like you're allowing other that to happen
that's
to
if you
other
get lucky.
people.
That's if you get lucky. You just
Yeah,
lose your
if you're,
hand.
yeah, I agree. So like my question is like how much of the population is suffering and how much is
For
living
us, it
that
doesn't
happy
matter.
life?
It doesn't matter for us. Like I said, everyone could be happy, and we would still do extinction if it can still go terribly wrong, because we would be thinking of the potential victims.
Yeah. I don't think most people like
Yeah, that's
feel
fine.
that way.
But
I
but
think
this is
the
technically the
vast
correct thing
majority
to
of
do, though.
people.
It's technically the right thing to do. So we have that on our side.
I don't know.
Because look, you're
For hold
resorting to
on.
an argument of saying, well, I don't think most people agree. So that's the opposite
No.
of
Okay,
providing
so
a counter
I think I
argument.
can kind of tie this into like a better sort of argument here. So if you can imagine like two different worlds, all right. Sorry, I'm a little oh, not thinking super clear in it right now, but you can imagine two different worlds. One is the world where the majority of people are happy and living a good life. Let's even say like life is like this is like heaven on earth. We've solved every major disease, but there's still a
I can
possibility at
just tell
some
you, we're
point.
never going to accept it. We're never going to agree with it. Never.
Yeah, yeah, I respect your strong stance and
Because
your
it can go wrong. It can go wrong,
adherence.
right? It can go
Right,
wrong.
right.
So most
I'm
people would
just here.
accept that standard. Most people would accept
Right.
that inferior
No,
standard
no,
of
no.
safety.
I think I'm making a wider point. I think that it's not a repetition. It's actually like a new enough idea to discuss. So if you could imagine two worlds, one world where let's say where it's like heaven on earth, but there is a chance that at some point things could go wrong and it could spiral, and all these things that you're trying to prevent. Why you believe what you do as a extinctionist. This is still something that's possible in some sense. So therefore, extinctionism is still good, even though 99% of the world is living, perfectly happy life.
Yeah.
And
We'll always
then
fight for the victims, even if they're only
the,
potential.
I think that like from a math perspective, fear out like weighing like more like morals and what is suffering and what kind of suffering is worse than another type of suffering. But like if you could like step back and kind of like humor me for a second. I think
Yeah.
if you were to like add up the amount of suffering that was on that planet, which is like let's say it's like none, but then you times it by a 0.1% chance, and over the scale of the universe or whatever. So you multiply the chance of something suffering
You can't
possibly
though. That's the
occurring.
problem. That's the problem. Is that you cannot calculate that chance. It's infinite.
Right.
It's
Okay. Okay.
unlimited.
No, no.
Without
We can.
omniscience, there will always be infinite different ways that things can go wrong in infinitely,
Right.
terrible ways,
Okay.
basically. So
Okay.
you're struggling to
Whatever.
understand that core concept. You're trying to limit it, whereas you can't limit it. It will always be unlimited.
So, I guess
The only way
if
to
you're
limit it is with omniscience. That there is literally
it
no other
depends
way.
on your perspective like of the universe and how big and whether there's multiple universes and how old the universe is and other things like that. But if you could just humor me for a second, and you can repeat the same point about needing omniscience or whatever afterwards, but maybe
Okay,
just for the audience
go
if
for it.
anyone agrees, right?
Go for it.
Yeah, we have this one world where it's like heaven on earth, but we can, because we're not omniscient, we're not God ourselves, we can't know that at some point we can't, you can't prove a negative, like you can't, I mean, I actually can't prove certain negatives, but we can't exclude the possibility that at some point somebody might get a paper cut or there's some new thing that and like I'm playing it on the weak side, right? But and then there's your world where you want to live in where
We don't want to live.
right. Well, there's the world that you're working towards achieving, right? Sorry, there's a world that you want to be dead in, okay? But there's this the same world, right? But you're trying to achieve this extinctionism, and in the process of achieving that extinctionism, because 999% of people are happy and living their best life, in order to achieve this, it's so like that percentage chance and the amount of vigilantism and suffering that would have to be achieved
No,
to
it's still
get
worth
to
it.
your
It's still
goal.
worth it because there's all of eternity and it can go infinitely wrong in infinite different ways. So again, you
Well,
just
that's
have to
when
do
again
maximum
we have to get
prevention.
into metaphysics, and
No,
maybe
again,
the universe is finite, but
you're just failing to accept the concept that there will always be unlimited risk forever, right? So
yeah, I
it
mean
can go
that's
on. It
something
can
I
go
would
on
have to
infinitely. So it could get
discuss
infinitely
a bit.
worse for infinite time, right? So people never consider the worst case scenarios. They always just
I
consider
mean, what if we
the
knew
best
we
case
knew? Hold
scenarios.
on, like we know the universe
The
is going to
best case
experience heat death
scenarios.
at some point, right?
That's not an excuse for allowing suffering,
No, it's not an excuse for allowing
which a lot
suffering.
of people
But
would
I'm
try.
saying, hold on. I think this is a decent thing to consider here. So, in the amount of time that it would take for the universe to evaporate on itself and for your goal to essentially be achieved,
That wouldn't achieve
there's
our
two
goal.
choices.
That would not achieve our goal, right? It's to prevent all of the suffering that we can. So that wouldn't achieve our goal. That would allow all of the suffering that we should prevent.
If the universe
Yeah, you're saying
experienced heat
we should
death,
allow all of the suffering until the universe eventually does heat death. No, that would be the opposite of our goal. Right?
No, that's not what I'm
We
saying.
shouldn't
Sorry,
allow all
sorry.
of the suffering for the rest of time.
Yeah.
You,
I understand you're really like eager to debate, but like I'm just trying to make the point of in my hypothetical where I had this universe where everyone's happy and there is no suffering. So we live in there's two worlds where everyone's happy and there's some chance of some suffering occurring before the death of the universe. And let's simplify it. Let's say it's in 1,000 years when the universe is going to explode. Everyone's happy. But there's some chance in between that some unknown virus that even though we have the best technology, we can't cure, blah, 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 right? So we live in that world, or there's the world where you're trying to achieve extinctionism, you're fighting against 99.9% of the population, you're going to have people within your group that make mistakes, that,
what about
maybe
animals?
there's
So how do we help wild animals then if we don't do extinction?
in my now I understand like I understand your point, and if we can discuss kind of at a later date if you're curious, like in our world and whether any of
I'm
this is
just asking.
possible.
What about animals?
What if we were able to
The
genetically
main
modify?
ones
Hold
that
on.
we
What
need to
if
help.
every single new animal we were able to genetically modify so they were able
You
to
can't
take
do
their
that.
energy from the sun?
It will completely destroy the ecosystem.
I'm saying I can imagine a world. Honestly,
You can't just mess with
I,
the ecosystem like that.
hmm. I mean,
And they
I'm
don't
doing
deserve
hypotheticals here, right? Because I'm
they don't deserve to just be items that we demand exist, right? They're not objects that for our amusement, right? We shouldn't demand that animals exist just
okay.
for the
Well,
sake of it.
let's say in this hypothetical world, because we've cured all possible problems, we can just teleport
Would
food
you
into
want to be a
stomachs, and we
cockroach?
don't even need animals
Would
anymore.
Yeah.
What if? Well, yeah, I could agree with you then. Like, let's just say, like, yeah, okay, let's extinct animals at that point in this hypothetical. But instead, we actually are going to move forward with the goal of getting rid of animals because we can't prevent the suffering, or we come up with some sort of scientific invention that allows us to reduce the amount of suffering within animals to such a degree, or give them consciousness to such that the highs
Yeah.
that they experience are better than any lows.
But every single one of these things still allows victims. So we will be fighting for those victims, whereas everyone else will
Okay.
be finding ways to allow them to suffer, like you're effectively
Mhm.
doing now without, intending to.
Yeah, I mean, my point is, I think they're going to suffer anyways because
Well,
this is a
no, they're not just going to suffer either way,
chance.
right?
Like,
We can't allow them to keep suffering.
well, I mean, could go stub my toe right now. Like, hey, we're not gonna like,
That's got nothing to do with
you're not
animals
gonna solve
suffering.
that question
It's
overnight.
got nothing to do with
Well,
animals suffering.
I agree that animal suffering is your best argument, and we can discuss about that
It's not our
specifically.
best argument. So we shouldn't discriminate against animals and humans like you're doing, right? Humans don't deserve to suffer either.
Right. But if theoretically, like, I'm not a big fan of like Sam Harris, honestly, but
Me neither.
if you there were like certain highs, like certain well-being peaks that so drastically outweighed the negatives. If that world was able to be achieved and able to be maintained to a higher percentage than
You
your
can't
chance
guarantee,
of
but can you
achieving
guarantee it?
extinctionism,
So in this world, things can still go infinitely wrong. Is that correct?
I don't know. I don't think so.
So well, that's
They
the
can go
point.
infinitely wrong. Well,
Exactly.
no, I
If you
mean, the
don't know,
universe
then the
is
answer is
finite, and let's
yes.
say we live in a single universe model, then no,
If
they
no,
wouldn't go
no, no,
infinitely
no, no.
wrong.
Yeah, that's come on. Don't be silly, right? Unless you actually know everything, then you can't guarantee that.
There's a difference between like proving it, like literally needing to be God, and then making
When
like
it
an
comes to
extreme,
safety,
like I said, I'm a
we should have the
Bayesian when
highest
it comes to
standards.
analyzing
No,
evidence.
we should have the highest standards when it comes to safety. Right? So not like
Um,
could it go
yes,
wrong? I don't
if
know.
it
Who
doesn't,
cares? That's what you said, right? Could it go wrong?
but
Yeah, who
that's like
cares?
saying, hey, we're not going to build a hospital because somebody's going to have to
No,
get
it's
on a
different.
ladder
It's
and they
different.
could trip
It's
and fall
different.
off of it.
It's
That's
different.
dumb.
That's not a valid comparison.
That's like let's say nobody had
That's
to
not a
work.
valid
Like,
comparison, right? With
I think it's a good point. Yeah.
children are being abused, right? That they are not ladders, okay?
Okay, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. To help children being abused, we have to do things like climb up on ladders, which might involve somebody falling
No,
off
no.
of one, right?
So a lot of people make this argument like it's fun to rescue the victims, so we should allow them to suffer so that we can rescue them.
No, no,
That's
no, no.
not
That's
fair.
not
We
what I'm
should
saying. I'm
prevent
saying
their
that
suffering.
certain
Prevent
types
it.
of suffering. I'm saying that certain types of suffering are necessary in
No,
order to
no, no.
reduce
It's disgusting.
the
It's
overall
disgusting. Look,
amount of.
Yeah, for
I
child
mean,
abusers, the
if
suffering
you
of their
try to make a
victims
point,
is necessary to
you could
improve
try
the
to make a
overall
point, but when you go
pleasure
and
that they're
punch
having.
when you go and punch somebody that's harming a child, you're causing suffering to them, but you're
I'm not.
making
I'm
a
not
greater
talking about.
good,
No, come on, dude.
right?
You're just defending child abuse and suffering.
Dude, come on,
We
don't say that.
Well,
We've
you
been
are though.
having a
You are though.
respectful
Look, the thing
conversation.
is, if you're pro-life, then you are pro all of the suffering,
What
including
I'm
child
saying is
abuse.
sometimes we have to engage in
Yeah,
causing harm in
we
order
don't. We
to.
don't. What? So we have to allow
I
child
mean,
abuse for what?
it's
For
true.
what? For what point? What can justify child
Hold on.
abuse?
If somebody walked into a building with a bomb and they're about to blow it up, would it not be justified to shoot them before they were
We're
able to
not.
do it?
This is not the reality that we're living in. We're in a world where there is child abuse. Can you name something that justifies it?
Can I name something
Yeah,
that
like how much
justifies?
ice cream do I have to
No, I
eat
don't
in
think it's.
order to make it like balance out?
Well, I think my point about this world A and world B, where both worlds have this happening regardless, obviously, like I understand
It's
you're
not
trying to make a
regardless.
rhetorical
It's
point.
not regardless, right? That's not a valid. You're being dishonest essentially. So suffering will not happen regardless. We can either allow it infinitely or we can try and prevent it. That's very different. It's not the same thing.
No, I think to get to your goal, you're still going to have parents and children living their lives, and there's going to be some risk of something horrible like that
And what's wrong
happening.
with that? What's wrong with that?
So there's two different worlds that you can live in. Either one where
We
you're,
live in one world,
you know,
bro. There is only one world.
right. But I'm trying to figure out which world that is.
We live in a world where there is suffering that we shouldn't allow.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I try
What?
to prevent as much suffering as I can.
But
But
you're
my point is,
advocating
I'm
for
not
not making
gonna.
it impossible. You're advocating
It,
against the end of all suffering. You can't have your cake and eat it and say I'm against suffering, but I advocate for it. You can't have your cake and eat it. It's very
I don't think.
tempting. Now the thing is that because evolution has made people into monsters, they do support all of these evil things, but
Yeah.
they still have an ego, so they want to still say that they're good people and that they're correct on the
It,
position,
it,
even though they're completely
what
wrong and
I'm
evil.
if I could break it down, like, okay, let's do like a classic trolley problem, but on one track you have like a human and on one track you have like a mouse. Do you think like all species can experience the same level of suffering, and do you think
It
that
doesn't
suffering
look.
of
You're just
certain.
trying to discriminate against different types
Yeah,
of
no,
suffering.
I'm literally not, because I
You
told
are.
you that
You are.
I believe in animal suffering, and I
We know they
believe it's
both
one of the
suffer. We
best
know they both
arguments.
suffer. There's no. It doesn't help to
Okay,
decide which animal
okay,
suffers
right.
more.
Okay, okay. You don't think that could
That
be
only
useful
serves
in
to
any
defend that. No,
possible
that
situation? That's
only
just
serves to
that all
defend
that is
suffering.
just
That
supporting child abuse,
that
hey, to
only
just have
tend.
these kind of
Look,
conversations.
it's like a slave owner saying, "Well, look, guys, some of my slaves don't suffer that badly, right? So we shouldn't
Okay,
end
so if
slavery."
one of the slaves were to pick up a rock and bash it against the slave master's head, do you think he's done a good or bad thing?
This is just irrelevant to extinctionism and abolitionism.
Okay. I mean, I'm trying to have a dialogue here with you, man.
That's fair enough. Anyway, we're going to end it there because we've got more callers in the queue. So thank you for that discussion. And, it was a good discussion. So thank you for that, good, respectful, politeful discussion. Now, yeah, I'm happy to have you back on again in the future. But I think we sort of got to the end of it, really. But we do have someone waiting. So let's see if he's there. Hello, how you doing?
Hey, not bad, man. How about yourself?
Good, thank you.
Right on. So yeah, I've been following your live here for probably about 20 minutes.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, how do you convince people that pain or sentience is somehow just absolutely or categorically bad?
Yeah, because like if you're in a life of pure pain, that would be bad, wouldn't it?
Well, we're not though, so that hypothetical is irrelevant.
But well, it's not irrelevant because lots of people and animals are.
That's not absolute. You've
It,
changed your goalpost. You said
well,
just a moment ago that if we're all in pure pain, and now you're saying if lots of people are, those are different.
no. So we're against allowing the existence of suffering essentially because if you allow it, there will be extreme suffering.
That's circular. You're saying you're
It's
against
not circular.
suffering because suffering.
No, it's like being against child abuse, right? We shouldn't allow child abuse because we're against it, right? That's not
That's an
circular.
example of suffering. That's
That's
an example of
obvious.
suffering.
Yeah, so we're
But why
against
is
suffering
suffering bad?
existing
Is what I'm asking.
because it's harmful for the victims who suffer too much.
Harm is a synonym for suffering.
Yeah. So, but they do suffer too much, right?
It's just using it in the progressive
I'm
tense.
putting you on strike one for that. So let's see if you can answer this question. Are there victims that suffer too much?
What do you mean strike one? Sorry, I don't understand your system of
So you're
strikes.
dodging the question. So I give people to 3 strikes.
I asked you a question.
If they try and dodge the question, I'll give them 3 chances
I
to
didn't hear
answer
your
it
question.
before
Wait a
kicking them
second.
out.
You didn't ask me a question, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I'm sorry. So can you remove the strike because I didn't actually hear your question?
Yeah, I mean,
if I ignore your question intentionally, then yeah, I would agree that's not fair.
yeah. Well, look, let's get
Thank
back
you.
on track then.
Okay.
So what were you saying?
Oh, sure. Oh, I'm not sure what your question was, though. I don't want to be a bad faith interlocutor. If you have a question, oh, please. But I thought I was asking you
Yeah, no,
questions.
let's
But sure, we
just
can
go back
switch
on.
to your question. Okay, sure. So then, in that case, why is pain bad? Like ethically, I mean, from an ethical standpoint, why are people supposed to believe that no matter what, pain bad?
It's not just pain bad, believe it no matter what, right? That's not really an accurate
Okay.
representation. So we know that
Okay.
pain is bad. It's well known. It's common knowledge that, and that if you have too much, then it's unacceptable. It becomes unbearable, and it can get to a point where there is no balance, and you would be better off not existing.
It can be. That's a modal expression of possibility. That doesn't
No,
mean it will, nor that it does.
it does happen though.
It can, you said. Now you're saying it does. But
It
we
can and
both
does.
know in our own living, we both know in our living experience now that it's not happening right now, nor
Yeah,
to
it
you,
is.
nor to
It
me,
is.
nor
It
to
is.
our listeners.
It's
Purely
happening.
and only. No, it's not.
Well, that's just ignorance, right? You're saying that nobody is suffering terribly right now. No animals are suffering
I didn't say
terribly.
nobody.
Yeah,
I
you are.
didn't
You
say
did.
nobody. I
You
said
did. You just
purely and
said that.
only.
Okay, so
Where?
look, if
I
you're
didn't
going to
say nobody.
deny the fact that there is terrible suffering going on, then we'll just have to assume that you're completely
Well, terrible,
insane.
the adjective. Well,
I was
terrible, the
saying
adjective doesn't help
we'll
us
have to assume that
demonstrate
you're
that it's
insane.
actually the case.
So
Well,
you are
calling me
denying.
insane is an ad
Yeah.
hominem.
Yeah, no, it's just an accurate description, right? If you're saying that
You're not a clinical psychologist.
okay, so we're just gonna finish it there because he kind of got cooked and served, basically, right? So yeah, look, asking for proof that suffering is bad is like asking for proof that 1 + 1 = 2. It's like, guys, we can't ban child abuse because we need to prove it's bad first. That's effectively what it is. So it is logically and rationally unreasonable. It is, in a technical sense, it is actually unreasonable, if you look at it logically, to demand proof that suffering is bad. It would be like asking the tax man for proof that 1 + 1 = 2, and therefore he can't prove that the taxes should be charged, basically. So yeah, it's like a slave owner asking for proof slavery is bad. It's like it's obviously bad, right? That you're literally torturing them to death. So yeah, it's not a reasonable question. It is as quite literally as unreasonable as asking what is, why is 1 + 1 = 2? Like, why does it equal that, right? Can you prove it? It's like, bro, you want me to start proving mathematics now so that we can prove 1 + 1 = 2? And in the same way, yeah, asking for proof child abuse is bad is just, it's unreasonable, right? And you can absolutely say that that is irrational and insane, and that is also an accurate description, right? Is it a rational question to ask for proof that child abuse is bad? No, it's not rational or reasonable. So if someone asked for proof that 1 + 1 = 2, you would say, what? You're literally not going to accept any of these taxes or any of this stuff because you want proof that 1 + 1 = 2? So it's the exact same thing. It's like a child abuser saying, excuse me, Mr. Police Officer, can you prove that child abuse is bad before you arrest me? Because I'm not going to let you arrest me unless you prove it. So it is the same thing. It's the exact same thing. It's completely unreasonable. Everyone knows that suffering is bad. And as I was trying to explain to him that, there's obviously lots of animals and people going through lives of pure hell, he was unable to accept that very obvious fact, right? He was unable to accept the reality, right? The truth, essentially. So most people, unfortunately, cannot handle the truth, cannot handle the reality. He said that there is no suffering. No person, nobody, no animal is terribly suffering. He said, look, you're not suffering, I'm not suffering, no one in the chat is suffering. So it's just a complete delusion, a fantasy, right? A lie that people tell themselves so that they can feel comfortable in this terrible world, right? It's a coping mechanism, right? So we're effectively in hell. You're going to suffer terribly. Others are suffering terribly, and in order to survive that harsh reality, he has to tell himself that there is no suffering anywhere. So it's a complete delusion, a complete fantasy that supports all of the suffering in the world. So as I was explaining earlier in the stream, people are not even able to comprehend the severity of suffering. They're not able to empathize with it. They're not able to care about it or to understand how it works accurately. And if they've never experienced extreme suffering, then the thing is, it's irrational because instead of understanding it and understanding that it exists, they're not able to comprehend extreme suffering, and they're not able to essentially process the world in a way that incorporates the existence of extreme suffering. So they end up just allowing it and just being like, oh, yeah, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with extreme suffering? Because they cannot understand it properly. They are completely incapable of it. And so this is due to general rationality, right? So humans are irrational creatures in irrational life forms, effectively. And it makes them religious, it makes them spiritualistic, it makes them racist, it makes them sexist, it makes them aggressive, it makes them discriminate against everyone, basically. It gives them discriminatory empathy in the same way that a lion would have maybe some empathy for its cubs, but not for its victims. People have empathy for like their family, their race, but not for any animals or not for people of other races, essentially. So they have discriminatory empathy. And that's why extinctionists are different, because we don't have discriminatory empathy. We care about all life and all individuals, every single last one, even the trolls. And we care about every species, and we also care about potential life and potential sufferers as well. So whereas most people care about themselves only, we have to care about everyone else. And the conclusion is to not allow them to suffer. Hello, how you doing? Hello, can you hear us? Yeah, you've got yourself muted. Do you want to unmute yourself on Discord? And then we should be able to hear you. Anadane. Okay, while we wait for Anadane to unmute themselves, we'll see if there's any questions in the chat. All right. Oh, hello.
Hello, yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know how Discord works. I just wanted to debate.
That's okay, yeah. Go for it.
I have no idea. Yeah.
Should we end all suffering, or should we allow suffering?
Well, suffering is defined by an agent. So if you have an agent, that agent can suffer. Oh, I'm sorry, am I still on?
Yeah. It's all good.
If you have an agent, that agent can suffer or not suffer. But if you remove the agent, you might technically remove suffering, but that doesn't matter because you've removed the agent that can feel suffering or not feel suffering.
Right, but I mean, you wouldn't want there to be any victims in hell. So removing victims from hell would be the right thing to do. And preventing new victims from going into hell, right? So that's extinction. Because the world is effectively hell for the victims here.
So extinction has to have, it can't be an atheistic thing. It has to have a religious aspect.
No,
is that what you're saying?
it's the opposite. Our movement is atheistic.
So your movement is atheistic, but you ignore consent.
We don't ignore it. We don't ignore it. We don't ignore anything. We take account of everything, but this is still the right decision. Everything being accounted for.
So if everything is accounted for, most people want to live. I mean, I have a shit life. I want to live.
So do you think that means that we shouldn't end all suffering, that all of those in bad lives should suffer so that others can maybe be happy at their expense?
I think the people with shit lives don't want to suffer. I don't want to suffer, but that doesn't mean I want to die, because then I don't exist.
Right, but you're probably more privileged than the real sufferers, though. Think if you were just screaming in pain all day, every day. Should we allow that to happen to innocent children, to be forced to suffer like that?
Well, that is a minority of people.
Does that
and
mean
what
it's
we should
okay?
do,
Does that make it okay?
that doesn't mean that it's okay, but that
So,
doesn't
so
mean we
you
should kill
support, so you support allowing minorities to suffer?
I'm a minority. I'm disabled.
I'm asking you a
I
question.
don't.
I'm putting you on strike one for that. I'm putting you on strike one for that. So, do you support allowing minorities to suffer?
No.
But you just said you
Do
do.
you? No, I do not. I do
You
not
said
think
it's
we
just a
should kill people.
minority. You said it's just a minority, so we don't have to care about them. So we should just let the minority
I,
suffer.
I am a minority. I am a
So
minority.
you want
That's
to
what I
have, so you want to have your cake and eat it, right? And instead of explaining your position, you're just going to say, "Well, I'm a minority," which is not,
No,
really
I'm saying I
addressing,
don't
not
suffer
really
every
addressing
day.
what we're talking about. You don't have to bring
I'm
race
saying
into it.
and I don't want you to kill me. I
So,
don't want
but
to die.
so
That's
you
what I'm saying.
do you think we should allow the minority to suffer, like you said?
No, but I don't think we should kill them against their consent.
So is there a different way to prevent their suffering?
Yes, to end capitalism, to get a better healthcare, better mental health.
But that doesn't end suffering, though, right? That doesn't make suffering impossible. So the standard that life deserves is for suffering to be impossible, and only non-existence can do that.
Joy will also be impossible with your thing.
Say again?
Joy will
Say
be
again?
impossible. No, if we kill everyone, joy is impossible.
Yeah, but
We can't
okay, let me ask you, do you think that joy should exist at any cost, no matter how much harm it causes?
No, I think people should exist to experience joy.
So I'm asking you a question. Do you think that joy should always exist no matter what? Even if there's at the expense of extreme harm? Like, let's say there was only one person experiencing joy and everybody else was begging for death. Do you think that joy should still have to exist, that we shouldn't end their suffering? Everyone else should have to suffer for the joy of the one?
I think it depends on who wants to die and who doesn't want to die.
So let's say they're all babies, right? So let's say that, for example, sea turtles, right? They have 200 children and all of them get eaten alive except for one. So do you think that's acceptable to force babies to be eaten alive so that one can have a good life?
No, I don't think anyone is forcing babies to be eaten alive.
Really? So you don't think that animals are being born without consent and then being eaten alive? That's interesting.
Of course, I think everyone
What planet are you living on? What planet are you living on? Where nobody's being...
planet where people suffer, where I suffer, but I'm a human being. So I exist. You can't just ignore consent.
Me, basically, right? So that has nothing to do with allowing animals to suffer. That has nothing to do with allowing other humans to suffer.
Happen? Do you want to just kill people who don't consent to being killed?
No, that's not it, really. It's that we want to make sure that nobody is suffering terribly, and we understand that that is worth it at any cost.
But how do you want to do this? How do you want to achieve that nobody is suffering terribly?
It doesn't matter how much pain it causes. It's still better than the alternative. So there's no amount
but how do you achieve that?
Yeah, euthanasia. Yeah, euthanasia.
Kill everyone even if they don't consent?
There's no amount of suffering that can cause that would be more than it prevents.
To not waffle on.
Yeah,
do you want
but
to
listen. For what you're accusing me of to actually be wrong, it would have to be worse than the... I'm talking, I'm not finished. So for what you're accusing me of to actually be wrong, right, it would have to be worse than the alternative, right? So you're saying that it would cause some suffering to do extinction, right? And you're saying that is what makes it unacceptable. But whereas okay, well, if you're not going to let me talk, right, then we're just going to end the conversation there. Thank you for not letting me speak, right? So again, if you're effectively going to criticize extinction for causing suffering, even though it actually causes effectively no suffering, then it doesn't make sense, because you're saying we shouldn't end all suffering because it might cause a tiny bit of suffering. So again, the only way for your argument to be valid is if you can suggest that extinction would cause more suffering than it prevents, essentially. So for wild animals, right, they're just being eaten alive horrifically, and to put them to sleep takes 30 seconds or something, right? That is nothing compared to an entire life of suffering, and it's also nothing compared to billions of more years of suffering. So how is 30 seconds of probably it's probably going to feel nice, right? If it's morphine or something, we can probably do the euthanasia in a pleasurable way. So how is going, oh yeah, that feels good. How is that going to be worse than billions of years of more suffering, or even just a life of pure suffering for the individuals that we save from that, right? With the euthanasia, it prevents them from having a bad life. It prevents them from having to continue living through a bad life, and it prevents them from having a natural and terrible death, like being eaten alive. So extinction doesn't cause more suffering, and any suffering that extinction could cause would be essentially an inconvenience to the privileged dystopian oppressors of the world, effectively, right? It's like, oh, well, I might have to grieve or something, or that might cause me a bit of anxiety, right? Whereas, there are humans and animals that are being tortured horrifically by life, by diseases, chronic pain, disability, abusers, family members, animal exploiters, etc. So any pain that extinction could cause, or any anxiety it could cause, would be nothing in comparison to the victims that we would be saving with extinction at the time, and then all of the future suffering that it would prevent as well. So you can't really say that extinction would be wrong because it could cause suffering, unless you can suggest a way that it could cause more suffering than it prevents, right? Again, billions of years of future suffering versus like 30 seconds or maybe a bit of anxiety beforehand. It's really not possible. I mean, look, guys, if you've ever seen, you may have heard of like if the history of the world was a book, then humanity would be like, the last word or something, right? That's how big the history of life on our planet is. It's just gigantic. So look, guys, any suffering extinction would cause would be nothing in comparison to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of more years, billions of more years of extreme suffering. And if we don't do this, then animals will definitely continue to suffer in unacceptable and unfair ways in nature, and they'll continue to be abused by humans, exploited, owned as pets and then abused, just allowed to suffer naturally as well, right? Allowed to just starve and just suffer and survive terribly. So yeah, we have two choices. We either allow all of the suffering in the world, which everyone is doing right now, right? Just let's grow the suffering. Let's allow all of the suffering. Let's do nothing about it at all, right? For wild animals, their suffering has never improved in history and never will. There is no way to improve wild animal suffering, and we shouldn't look to reduce their suffering either. We should look to end it in the same way that you wouldn't look to reduce slavery. You should absolutely look to end it, right? If you're going to say we should never end slavery, we should just reduce it, right? Or we should never end suffering, we should just reduce it. It's the same thing. Imagine if somebody was, if there was a protest against slavery and somebody came up and said, guys, let's change the chant. Let's start saying, never end slavery, reduce it. Never end slavery, reduce it, right? So people, when it comes to suffering, people are like, oh yeah, let's just reduce it. Never end suffering, just reduce it. It is actually worse than slavery, more evil than slavery, right? It's way worse than that. So that's the mentality people have. Yeah, just don't care about the suffering in the world, effectively. That's the real truth of the mentality, right? It is to not care about the suffering. That is the core of the mentality. Don't care if there's any suffering ever in the world. Just don't care about it. Don't consider if it's right or wrong. Don't consider intervening. Don't consider trying to help. Just never care about the suffering in the world, which is what people are doing with wild animals, right? They want them to keep suffering. They think it's funny. They think it's entertaining. Okay, so if anybody else wants to have a debate, then feel free to join my Discord. The link is right here. We can bring you onto the stream and have a debate live on YouTube. We can hear your opinions. We can hear your questions. Right? If you want to have a discussion, have any questions to ask, then feel free to ask me. And so yeah, that Discord server is set up. It's like an open room. It's very easy to join it. You can even do it while multitasking on YouTube. And it's very streamlined process to join and debate. All right, let's see if there's any interesting questions in the chat. You are making an argument for slavery. No, we're making an argument for not allowing any slavery or suffering ever again in the only way possible and the only fair way possible, and in a way which causes less suffering than it prevents, right? So yeah, slavery is happening right now. There's even slavery in the animal kingdom, from humans and from other animals. And so yeah, we have to stop all slavery and suffering, and extinction is the only way to do it. Like, there is no other way. And if you guys can suggest a better way, I'd love to hear it. But most people will just end up saying, oh, let's just reduce the suffering. Let's work towards a world where nobody is suffering. But for extinction, I'm really going to have to get this mic refunded. It's terrible. So, as I was trying to say, we have to work towards a universe with no life and no possibility of life. Who is that bad for? It's bad for the selfish ones that don't care about the victims of life, but it's the best thing possible for the victims of life, for the sufferers, right? Extinction is desperately needed, urgently required for the victims of suffering, right? There are people and animals going through horrific amounts of torture. So is there an amount of suffering that individuals can go through that makes their life not worth living, and makes it so that they would have been better off not being born, that they would be better off no longer existing, or never having existed in the first place? Now, the answer is obviously yes, right? And some people, like our last guest, want to pretend that the answer is no, that there is no amount of suffering that can make life not worth existing. He really, really wanted to pretend massively that there was literally no extreme suffering in the world, which is, incredibly irrational, right? So people's ability to understand the world and how it works is just massively hindered and suppressed by their irrationality, right? It will make them say completely crazy things like there is no suffering in the world. Maybe animals don't suffer, so maybe abusing them is okay. Just insane things like that. So it's an ocean of irrationality. The human psychology is just an ocean of irrationality and apathy, lack of empathy, lack of rationality, lack of ethics or doing the right thing. Over 99% of humans support animal exploitation existing, right? So, I mean, if that's not an insanely evil species, then I don't know what is. So, yeah, humans really have very little right to try and say that that it's ethical to allow suffering to exist, that it's sensical, that it's intelligent, that it's fair, right? We're effectively dealing with selfish, bratish children that are trying to trick us into thinking that we shouldn't make the world fair because currently they're benefiting, and if the world were to be fair, then they wouldn't benefit. So it's a bit like saying we should tax the rich, right? And Elon Musk says, oh, that would be unfair to me, right? So we should tax the rich so that we can feed the poor. Elon Musk would say that's unfair to me, right? And look, think about it this way. If there was a pleasure boat with two people on, and one of them is having a great time, but the other is suffering terribly, he needs a doctor, he's dying, he's like, oh, dude, I'm feeling terrible, please stop the boat, I need help, right? Imagine the other guy is like, no, I'm having so much fun, right? What about the joy? What about the beauty on this pleasure cruise, right? I will never stop the boat, you will never get help, you are just going to have to suffer and die so that I can keep having fun. So that is what life is, right? It's the lucky ones are saying, ha ha, we're going to keep this going. You should suffer so that I can be happy. Better luck next time, buddy. Oh, you're getting child abused and then murdered? Yeah, well, what about the joy and beauty in my life? So that's effectively what it is. And so it's an evil pleasure boat, right? Life is an evil pleasure boat full of victims, full of child abuse, animal abuse, people living lives of pure hell. And all of the lucky ones, the selfish ones on the boat, are saying, we will never stop this boat. You will always have to suffer horrifically so that we can have fun. So we are going to try and stop the boat, right? The pro-extinction movement are the only ones that are going to try and stop this boat and free the victims with total extinction, right? It's the only way to do it. There is, if I have a child right now, it's physically impossible to make sure it doesn't suffer. Whereas if you do have a child, if I have a child, you can't make it safe. Whereas if there is no child, it can't suffer. It's physically impossible to suffer. Whereas it's physically impossible to make it safe if it does exist. So the only way to make it safe from suffering, right? The safest that life can be from suffering and a bad life is non-existence. And so, yeah, there's been voluntary extinction movements in the past, but that doesn't help animals. It doesn't help anyone else's children who are being forced to exist. So extinction cannot be optional, and it cannot be, just done for one species. It can't be discriminatory. So we are working towards a non-optional, non-discriminatory providing of, prevention of suffering, right? For as much of the world as possible. So working towards the most vast and thorough extinction possible to make as much of the world as vast as possible, as safe as possible, or as thorough as possible, right? The most thorough extinction. So yeah, that's the only right thing to do, and that's what we have to work towards. And if you agree with this, then join the movement, become an activist. You can join through the website, proextinction.com. We have WhatsApp groups and Discord. The links are on the website. But if you want to do a debate, then I have my own Discord here for it. But yeah, we need to start doing activism, growing the movement, and educating people that all of the terrible suffering in the world is not acceptable, it's not fair, and we can't allow it. It's not ethical or right to allow it anymore. And not only can we not just not allow it, we have to actively fight to stop it, right? So instead of passive solutions like not having children, which achieves nothing, we have to do active solutions like actively doing science to work towards the most thorough and preventative extinction possible, make sure we get every last individual, whether it's humans or animals, right? So most people, they suggest a voluntary extinction, which is like the least thorough extinction possible, right? It will never happen, and it's just a joke. So we need to do a thorough one where we make sure there are no more individuals, no more animals suffering, and also make it so that life can never develop again to cause suffering and the cycle of suffering ever again. So to make the world as uninhabitable as possible for as much of the world as possible. So ideally make Earth completely uninhabitable forever. And if we can do more, then we should. If we can make the entire universe uninhabitable forever, or prevent the universe from coming back, whatever it is, right? Maximize the science for prevention of life, maximize the science for prevention of suffering. But yeah, really it's about the maximizing of prevention of life existing. So that's the main problem that the extinction movement is targeting, right? It's universe-wide extinction where most of the suffering will exist. So our science leads us to conclude that actually the universe will be full of life, and it will be very similar to life on Earth, where it's just animals killing each other and suffering in unacceptable ways, until eventually evolution produces an intelligent life form. Now, that might never happen. There might be lots of planets with just animals that never develop intelligence, or some of them may develop intelligence, just like Earth has done. Now, according to our theory and our science, so we expect that any other planet developing intelligence will be very similar to Earth, again, where intelligent life will essentially, for life to survive, right, for animals to survive, to evolve into humans, the pressure, the environment is so hostile, the pressure is so hostile, that it ends up in an incredibly powerful system of irrationality and allowing suffering, right? So for life to exist, it's not rational to survive, so you have to make it irrationally want to survive. Okay, and you have to make it irrationally not care about others, make it irrationally selfish, make it not care about its own suffering or the suffering of its children. That's the only way to make life exist and continue to survive and reproduce, is to make it into a completely irrational monster that doesn't care if it suffers itself or if anyone else suffers, or if it forces its children into suffering, or if it kills animals and makes them suffer. So it's monstrous, basically. And so, yeah, any intelligent life developing will most likely be monstrous. It will most likely be a dystopia, an evil dystopia, like ours is, because they will still have the evolutionary hangover, the holdover of irrationality, which is strictly required for survival, right? So irrationality is an extremely essential part of survival, and humans are only just now, in the modern day, starting to evolve to become rational creatures, right? To overcome the animalistic, irrational nature that was so strictly necessary for animals to survive in this hostile world. So most people still have that. That's why they're religious. That's why they're racist, sexist, cruel, selfish, right? They don't care about the existence of suffering. They exploit animals, right? They blame the victims. So really, we do live in a dystopia, with just animals suffering terribly. And this is basically the cookie cutter pattern for life existing in the universe. So it will always just be full of terrible suffering. Someone says they can't see my prompt fully. Let me shrink it down a bit, see if that helps you. There you go. Okay, so yeah, essentially, most of the suffering in the world will be in the rest of the universe. And so that is essentially where the majority of our moral obligation lies, essentially. And so that's why extinction does have to be done intelligently, fairly, and it's going to require the best science and technology that we can possibly produce. So we don't want to rush it. We want to make sure it's done thoroughly. Okay, we've got someone in the stream. Let's see who it is. Hello, how you doing? I see you've got yourself muted on Discord. If you just unmute yourself, and then we'll be able to hear you. Yeah, there you go. Hello.
Hey man, it's me.
Oh, Steve, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, great. So Steve is another activist in the movement, everyone. One of the leaders. He's has a lot to say about extinction. Very rational guy. Steve, yeah. What would you like to talk about?
I don't know what were you talking about.
I was just talking about how the majority of our moral obligation is in the rest of the universe. That's where most of the suffering is going to be. And, that's one of the reasons why we have to see extinctionism as being done intelligently, not rushing it like with voluntary human extinction, but working towards the most scientifically vast and thorough extinction possible, the maximum, the most intelligent prevention of life and suffering existing that is ever going to be possible. That's what we have to work towards.
Oh, there's one
True,
more guy waiting
we
for
are like
debate
huh?
in another room.
Oh yeah, we do have someone that wants to debate, Steve, in voice channel 2 on Discord. Do you want to should we hop over?
We can I'll switch to voice channel 2 so that we can just debate them.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, we've got someone called OC. Hello. If you'd like to unmute yourself, OC.
Hello.
Yeah, hi. How's it going?
For one sec, I can't get my audio to work right now. You're really quiet.
Is that any better?
No. Not currently. Give me 1 sec, let me see what the problem is.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, we've got Steve on the call, and we've also got a guest on the call as well. So Steve is actually the person that made the movement, and he's got his own channel on YouTube, which is pro_extinction. And Steve is the first activist to start the movement and has been educating everyone on how it works, why it is the right thing, what to do, and all of the details and ethics of it. Like, does consent mean that we can't do extinction? The answer is no. The end of all suffering is more important than consent or anything else.
Yeah, life keeps violating consent, and like extinction ends consent violations forever.
That's it. There's really no excuse for suffering being allowed, even consent, right? So consent, for example, what are people doing with it? They're using their freedom, their autonomy to exploit animals, to continue living and suffering terribly themselves, right? Making the wrong decision over and over again. I mean, just think how much animal exploitation there is, guys. It's obvious that humans are just pure evil, effectively, at the minute. So we need to do better. Instead of allowing suffering and causing suffering, we have to actively prevent as much suffering. And that means working towards a world where there is no possibility of suffering. That's the only right thing to do. Right? Life existing has zero value. So yeah, maximum prevention of suffering is
What do you
infinite
consider
value.
suffering?
Everything, but within all types of suffering, there's extreme suffering as well. So you've got stubbed toes, but then you've got terrible types of suffering as well, like a life of pure hell, disability, chronic pain. Most animals get eaten alive as children, right?
So do animals cause other animals suffering?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and the cycle of which you think is what should be ended?
Yeah. Why do animals deserve to suffer terribly? They don't.
But that's the cycle of life, no?
Yeah, exactly. But we should. It's not fair for the victims, so we should put a stop to it.
See, I feel like that's moral arbitration that's like gone way too far, though. No.
Well, not for the victims. For the victims, it's the perfect thing. It's exactly what they need.
But if animals aren't conscious of what they do, they're not conscious of the suffering they provide.
It's not just about the suffering they cause, right? They also starve to death, so it's not just caused suffering, right? Suffering can take many forms, have different sources.
So ideally,
whether suffering is caused or it is not caused, it doesn't matter to the victim. Whether somebody is putting you in a cage and starving you, or whether you are like just starving because you didn't get food, it's like the same suffering, and you want to get out of it the same amount.
So what would be the ideal? That we as an entire planet just never existed in the first place, or because then no suffering would occur?
Yeah, that would be ideal, but like we should at least now we should work for like stopping existence and like extreme suffering.
So you want to make the planet obsolete?
No. We want to cause the most vast extinction and thorough extinction possible.
Okay, yeah, but through extinction, you're basically saying, right, okay, well, let's take away all possibility of life for, literally anything that we can perceive right now, which in the observable universe is currently the only maintained life. So you're saying essentially get rid of all life. Does that also constitute germs? Are we talking about like germs suffer as well?
Otherwise they will evolve to be complex and suffer again.
Okay, so literally all life is a cycle of suffering in your perspective.
Yeah, but not in our perspective. That's just the reality.
What about the joy that you see in like a dog's eyes when it sees you come home?
Well,
you know what I mean?
Joy shouldn't exist at all costs, right? There are prices which are too high to pay for joy existing, and suffering is that price which is too high to pay.
It's too high to so. Obviously, you've had life experiences. You've gone through struggles and good times. Do you think that every single time you went through bad times, the good times weren't also worth it?
Correct.
So, I mean, do you have an example?
No. It's wait a second. It's not just about individual experiences. So when you are deciding that extinction is bad, right? So you are not deciding for yourself. So I can even say that, rape me, it's fine. Okay. But I cannot say that, other, 5,000 children are getting raped per day. So I cannot say that they should get raped because I love life.
No,
I don't have a right to do so.
Yeah, no, obviously not. But unfortunately, there are situations and circumstances where people get put in worse situations than ourselves, and we have to feel empathetic for them, not want to destroy all life possible because they suffer.
Yeah, feeling empathetic for them and crying about it doesn't help them. You taking some action only helps them. Wait a second. So suffering is very much ingrained into existence. Okay, So either the lion kills a zebra or the lion starves. It isn't fair to the lion or the zebra. So whatever you do, like just because you are empathetic towards the lion or zebra, they don't feel better. If they don't exist, only they can be protected from suffering.
So I would say that this perspective that you guys hold is the nihilistic to the furthest extent nihilistic. Like
No. We don't use philosophy bullshit terms and all. We are not nihilists. We are
no,
extinctionists.
I'm telling you that at the end of the day, though,
Yeah,
it's
we
it's
do.
nihilistic to be like, right, okay, because
We are not
people
nihilistic.
suffer, we
We are
should
not
just
nihilistic.
completely kill everything,
We,
you know?
we are not nihilistic. We do believe in like value in eradicating suffering.
Yeah, okay, but with eradicating suffering, you're also eradicating every other form of emotion. So that'd be good.
do
I
you
don't
not think
care.
that's
Like,
a simplistic
see,
way of thinking?
a dog wagging its tail when I come home, it's not worth it to justify children getting raped and like animals getting torn apart
We
alive.
can both agree
I don't
that
know
that
how
is
you
a
are saying.
sadism.
I don't know how you are saying it's worth it.
Yeah, okay.
Just because a dog is
okay.
climbing on you and like licking you and all, like children should get raped. What is this bullshit?
Let's agree on something, yeah? Like all child poverty and rape and all these things are the worst things that can happen, yes? Or like, like torture, war
Predation,
crimes, etc. All of that
starvation.
stuff is as bad as it gets.
No. Child rape and poverty is not the worst things. Animal suffering is the worst thing, both by quantity and severity in this world that is happening.
Okay, so you think the suffering of animals is worse than the physical and mental suffering of humans? Yes.
No, there's both. There's vice versa, right? There's animals that suffer worse than some humans, and there's humans that suffer worse than some animals. But overall, humans have the best conditions, though. Humans have the best conditions, whereas wild animals have the worst conditions with the most suffering, right? The most extreme.
Why do they have the worst conditions?
Because they have no shelter, no medicine, no stable food supply. They burn alive in wildfires. Most of them get eaten alive as children. So, yeah, that's definitely worse conditions than humans, where most human babies are not being eaten alive.
But at the same time, the surplus of animals shows that at least, they have a cycle of getting forward, evolution, pushing forward through the tough times that they go through, yes?
Yeah, it's not worth it for the suffering, though.
Yeah, we have literally not read science. You know what is R selection? Most of the animals reproduce like at least 2+ offsprings. Okay, so but like if dogs reproduce 4 puppies, you don't see dogs taking over planet Earth. What do you think happens to like one dog grows up and the rest of them like gets selected out? It's called R selection. They get a disease, they get like eaten by predators, they get injured and die, they don't get food and starve and die. This is called R selection.
It's like playing the lottery. It's playing the lottery
Evolution is
with
literally
lives.
evolution is literally a cruelty machine.
But being alive, being present, being like someone who lives in the earth doesn't necessarily mean that, like, unfortunately, there are going to be points where there are problems. Like, there are going to be animals who suffer. There are going to be, humans who suffer. But that doesn't mean that we should all section ourselves off and just kill everything because there's no point.
Why
in
not?
experience.
Why not?
That is
no. Let me explain.
That is the difference. You give importance to the people who have good lives. You give importance to you give importance to going home and seeing your dog wagging its tail. I give importance to raped children and starving animals.
Let me give you a better argument. Okay,
it's true. Steve is completely right.
I'm not saying that like just the look of your dog when it comes home, blah blah blah. That's not the only principle I'm talking about. But
some other nonsense privileges that you think justify child abuse. Some other weak excuses like, oh, the dog smiled one time. The dog smiled one time, so now all of the suffering in the world is fine.
Please. All right.
Okay, let me put it simply for you. You just name one thing. No. Wait a second. Wait a second. You just simply answer. No. Wait a second. I'll make it simple for you. Answer one question. Answer one question. Let's make it simple for you. Answer one question. Do you think you can stop crimes, starvation, child abuse, women getting raped, terrorism, natural disasters, predations, animal slavery. Do you think any of these can be stopped ever?
I think that you can work towards a point of minimality.
No, can it be stopped? Like, can it be made zero ever?
No, it's not going to be made zero ever.
It's not going to be made zero, right? Wait a second. Wait.
Okay.
Wait. If it is not going to be made zero, then answer me the other question. Let's say just one child gets raped every day, okay, by a rapist. They
Okay.
name one thing that is that will be able to justify that child getting raped.
I can't name one thing that justifies
You
it.
can't,
No.
right? So then extinction
No.
is the right way forward. That's it.
No, so
You're done.
that's an obsolete view, right?
How?
Look, can I explain my point, please?
Why don't you
Okay.
address
No,
that point?
there
Why
is
don't
no
you
point to
address that
explain.
point? Address
There
that
is
point.
no point to explain. You just
Okay.
accepted extinctionism.
They want to have their cake and eat it. Say, yeah, I don't accept suffering, but we should allow it.
No,
I don't support
no,
it, but
listen,
I won't
listen,
stop
let
it.
me
If
put my
you say
point
any
across
more point,
because
if
you're
you say
talking
any
over
more
me.
point, you are just a
Let
hypocrite.
me talk, or
You
else
are just a
there's no
hypocrite.
point. Let me talk,
If
or
you
else
say
there's no
any
point.
more point,
I'm
if
willing
you
to
say any
admit
point,
that there are
see, wait a
some
second.
issues
If
in
you
the
say any
world
more point,
that are
you're
going
a
to happen
hypocrite.
no
You're done.
matter what. That doesn't mean that extinction is the right way forward. It
Why
means
not?
that we need to progress to a point where we can minimize everything to a certainty that at least people aren't getting hurt, and then we work forward for animals.
How can you
much
achieve that
child rape
certainty?
per day?
How
How
can you
much you
achieve?
want to minimize? How much
On the
suffering?
planet,
How much child rapes per day is acceptable for you?
Dominant species on the planet, we have a duty of care towards the rest of the people and the rest of the animals on the earth. Yes, that is a granted, but that doesn't mean by living there is always going to be the possibility of suffering. By shutting
Yes.
everything off, you have no room for growth. You have no room for progression. Your words are fallacies because at the end of the day, without anything, there is nothing. What is there to experience if there is nothing?
That's what. So we should allow child abuse because of
Should we
this.
go to Saturn
This
and
is
blow
your
up
principle.
Saturn
This is
and
your
get one
morality.
possibility of a microbe on it?
This
If
guy's
there's
like,
one
we should allow
small-
child abuse because like we're scared of the alternative.
In no world did I say we should allow child abuse. I
Yeah,
said we
exactly.
need to go
You don't
forward
want to
and
say it. You want to
destroy
hide
that.
it and wrap it up in something else, right?
I don't want to wrap it up in something
You
else.
do.
I think
You do.
yeah,
You do.
No,
The
first
reality
problem, let's get
is that you
out
do.
of the way. First problem, let's blow up all the child rapists. Let's kill them all.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
my
This
first instance.
guy's
But that is
finished. This
also-
guy's finished. All right, he's done. So look, there is no way to remove just all of the child abusers like that, right? He's living in a fantasy world, right? Where you just click your fingers and all of the child abusers disappear and will just never be born ever again. So that's not realistic, guys.
Literally, he said minimize it, cannot be zero, minimize it. Like, what amount of pleasures what amount of dog wagging its tail when you're home can justify one child again getting raped?
Yeah, so he said we should
1,000
minimize
people.
it. He said we should minimize it and bring it down to something like one child abuse a day. And then when you said, but is there anything that actually justifies allowing that one child abuse a day? He said no. So, like, it's just a completely insane support of child abuse for no reason.
Anything else you can say beyond that point is hypocrisy. You just want to continue life for your own selfish reasons. That's it.
Yeah, so anyone else that wants to debate, join the Discord here, and we'll get you straight in. We can hear your questions, your counter-arguments.
There is someone named Thoughtology they want to debate.
Yeah, Thoughtology, if you fancy coming up, we'd be happy to talk to you now.
Oh yeah, we spoke earlier and then you left abruptly. I was just listening and gonna let somebody else new talk, but maybe once I get over to work, I have a bit of free time to chat. But
all right,
yeah, thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you anyway. So yeah, while we wait for some new challengers to come and debate extinction, tell us why you think it's wrong. Try and do better than, well, I'm not suffering. Now, if you want to say I'm not suffering, then tell us why, expand on that thought of why that means we should allow suffering and not do extinction. Yeah, Steve, are there any topics you want to cover at all?
I don't know. There is a lot of topics we can trash. Literally every other movement in the world other than extinctionism, every other ideology is irrational. So you just like randomly pick one.
Okay, let's go with antinatalism. Not having a
That
child.
is literally like ignoring every other suffering, right? Don't have a child, okay, you die. But let's say like all the humans went anti-natal, it is impossible. But still, like that is the end goal of anti-natalism, right? So animals, like in Earth alone, animals are 99.9% of sufferers, and there is also a possibility that life might be like very common in the universe. So I mean, like whatever conditions caused life on Earth, definitely they are out there also, right? So there might be lots of more sentient planets that can be like suffering. So anti-natalists just want to ignore all that and just concentrate on humans, which solves absolutely nothing. Which, in fact, like this would probably be the most harmful thing because, uh, like, we are the only species that we know of that can just go and solve uh, suffering of others, who can empathize, who has science and technology, who can research on what's the most vast and thorough extinction possible. You just take them out of equation. What do the animals have, right?
Nothing, right? Yeah. I mean, I really do tend to think that for most of these animals, they're just in pure survival mode. They're constantly, terrified of predators, constantly having to look out for that. It's not. It's like it's not something enjoyable, right? They're having to essentially work to survive and just to stay alive. So their entire life is just desperately trying to stay alive and running from predators, and then failing, right? Starving and then just being eaten alive. There's really no upside for wild animals at all. Yeah, it's amazing how people can just ignore and just devalue, not value correctly all of this insane suffering. That they can do it so much so that even with wild animals being torn apart, 99% or more, dying as children, being eaten alive, people will still find a way to say, well, if there's a tiny speck of happiness that comes out of all of that torture, then surely that's okay, right? It's just amazing. Okay, again, looking to get more people in the Discord, more debates going. Feel free to come in, guys. Steve, did you want to say something?
No, we can just like reply to some comments if you want.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of comments in the chat, but they're all pretty shallow. Let's see if there's any interesting topics that people are suggesting in the chat. Let us know, guys. Let's see, what have we got? So, this is pure evil? No, this is pure goodness, pure prevention of evil, actually. This is like a vegan trying to force the world to eat vegan. It's like someone trying to enforce ethics on the world, right? Oh, what a terrible thing.
Someone trying to eradicate suffering. How evil is that? No child rapes, we can't accept that. No predation, that is not acceptable.
Yeah, it's
no wars. Oh no. No, very evil.
No animal abuse,
we
no
have to have
no cheeseburgers, no animal exploitation. Can't have that. Yeah, it's amazing. All of these people defending life. I mean, I like to think that, the child abusers are sat there watching all of these people defend life, and they're like, they're working for me, basically. Oh, they're on my side. Yeah, the suffering is worth it for the pleasure. Yeah, all these people are defending child abuse. Yeah, guys, I feel great. That's probably what they're feeling if they watch these streams. Like, wow, so many people supporting the cruelty. Yeah, great. So all of these victimizers, animal exploiters, child abusers, when we're saying, guys, it's not fair to allow this, and everyone's like, yeah, it's fair. Who benefits from that? The child abusers, the animal exploiters, right? Literally only evil people. It's just crazy. Okay. Any more questions? Let's have a look. You can't eradicate suffering by adding suffering. That doesn't work. Wow. So when a doctor injects somebody with medicine and it hurts for a minute, that doesn't actually do anything good. Wow. It's amazing. You do have to cause suffering to prevent suffering, right? I mean, that's
So
just
people who think this is evil and all, like they are just literally like morons who have gotten brainwashed by Hollywood cliche Hollywood movies, right? So extinction is so evil. Okay, let's say what superheroes do, right? They save the world, and then what happens? Child rape will continue. These heroes are not able to stop it, and predation will continue. Nobody is stopping it. Accidents, wars, natural disasters, all these things are continuing, and beings are suffering. And after they suffer, before they die, they will just reproduce and create another batch to suffer, and then they will also die, right? So like if we just end it in like one one shot, it is bad, but like the world destroying itself again and again, and like suffering again and again is like very very much uh, you know uh, holy. It's not evil at all.
yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, the suffering in the world. It's a cool, exciting, interesting part of the world that makes it balanced. Only like extreme privilege can make you say such crazy things like, yeah, all of this extreme cruelty. It's just makes for such a perfect balance. Mwah. Yeah, I think the this magical balance that people have is it's like an evolutionary thing, I think, where it creates for like a stable understanding of the world, right? There is balance. The world is stable. It's a good environment for me to survive in, basically. And yeah, the more you understand suffering and that you can suffer terribly, the more that bubble breaks, right? This isn't a good environment at all. I don't want to be here. I shouldn't be here. I could suffer terribly, and it's the same for everyone else. It's just a purely animalistic thing to actually think that survival and reproduction can be good things. That they're not. So, as extinctionists, we see life as something that should never exist, ever, that being alive is always a bad thing, essentially. Now, the reason we stay alive is so that we can work towards completing animal extinction first and the most vast and thorough extinction possible before we think about human extinction. We have to help those that can't help themselves first. So that's why we do have to live, we do have to work towards intelligently preventing suffering and life from being forced to suffer. So, we have a world to take care of and prevent all of the suffering out there and end all suffering, not just our own. Okay? So help those that can't help themselves. That's why we have to live and do activism to make total extinction possible, right? We have to fight for the victims. So that means growing the movement, finding more people around the world who will agree to help do activism and make the end of all suffering possible. To find the people that will not allow suffering, who will say, yeah, suffering is unacceptable and we should do the maximum prevention of it possible for the sake of the victims, even if that means there's no happiness. It's the right thing to do. It's the difficult thing to do for selfish people, but it's still the right thing to do. It's the maximum safety that we can provide from torture for innocent individuals. And if the cost is happy lives, then that is an easy choice to make, a low price to pay. The lowest price. I mean, really, so as extinctionists, we see the value of life and joy and beauty and all this nonsense as being completely worthless. Now, sure, it does have some value, some worth, but it's effectively worthless, right? It has a negligible value, essentially. Now, we don't ignore it. We're not negligible and not negligent towards it, but it's just that the rational way to see the value of life and happiness compared to prevention of suffering, it's like, it's night and day, right? It's like a speck of sand in the beach. That's how much happiness is important compared to prevention of suffering and providing safety, making sure that nobody is trapped in a life of pure hell just so that others are having a good time. And if you don't do maximum providing of safety, the maximum extinction, then there will be the opposite, the maximum suffering and cruelty and lives of pure hell, which is exactly what we have right now with all of the animals being born into nature. 99% of life on the planet just being born into nature to die horrifically, to be eaten alive as a baby, to starve to death, to burn alive in a wildfire, to just be worthless, essentially, except to a predator who's just going to hunt you and kill you. And then even the predators suffer terribly. The thing is, guys, you can suffer in unacceptable ways in like millions of different ways. So it's not that bad people are causing suffering. Yeah, they are, but life is also causing suffering, diseases, injuries, predation. So it doesn't matter, if you get rid of predation or something else, there will always be a different way to suffer horrifically. So there's just infinite different ways to suffer in unacceptable ways that absolutely do make life not worth existing and not ethical to allow it to exist, because all it does is torture the innocents in unacceptable ways so that some can have a little bit of fun. That's obviously a terrible trade, a little bit of fun for an incredible amount of extreme suffering. Now, that is the system that nature has built, but it's also the system that humans support completely. For example, right, a little bit of fun, a little bit of happiness for an ocean of suffering, basically. They think that's a good trade. So humans are as unethical and immoral as they could possibly be, where they do support situations where a tiny bit of happiness or pleasure justifies a massive amount of extreme cruelty, like extremely horrific cruelty. For example, right, it's very easy to find these examples, like a cheeseburger or a chicken burger, right? You're going to torture an animal for its entire life for a moment of pleasure, right? So that's the dynamic that people support, that massive amounts of extreme suffering do justify tiny amounts of pleasure and happiness. So yeah, torture an animal for its entire life so you can have one sandwich for 10 minutes. Yeah, fine. Most of the animals in nature are being tortured to death in lives of pure hell, and the minority of humans, some of them are having a good life. Yeah, that's fine. Some of the animals might be having a little bit of fun, before they get eaten alive or starved to death. But yeah, it's not going to be much fun, right? It's not going to be much pleasure, right? They might get 1 or 2 meals and say, "Oh, this food is nice," before they get eaten alive themselves. There's not going to be much pleasure balancing that out, right? And there isn't much balance in life in general, right? Most of life is just suffering, working through a horrible job, struggling through all of the rubbish of life, housework, right? You sat on the toilet for probably 1/10 of your life or something, and whatever else, right? How long do you spend in work? Like half of your life is just complete, just suffering essentially, and then the rest of it is just suffering with a tiny bit of happiness, a tiny bit of pleasure. And so when we say that most of life, even for humans, isn't really that much pleasure or happiness, they're in effectively survival mode when they're doing other stuff, like when they're working or when they're doing housework or other stuff that makes life just boring and not worth living. Not that stuff makes it not worth living, but I'm just pointing out that even for animals and even for humans, most of the life is just rubbish, basically. There's a very few good moments that could possibly make it worth living, and yeah, it's only the lucky ones that actually have enough of those moments to make it worth living, and even then it's probably still not worth living. So how many people are living a terrible life right now thinking, well, it's not that bad, and yeah, I don't want to die, right? So there will be lots of people and animals trapped in horrific lives or terrible lives or bad lives where they definitely would have been better off not being born, but they'll still continue to live through it. They'll continue to live and then go on to suffer worse, or they'll continue to live through their suffering. And it's not because they want to live all the time. Like a lot of the time, they're too afraid to do anything else, to not live, essentially. So you're trapped, right? For a lot of the victims, they're trapped, especially animals, right? There's no way out. It's just you wake up in a prison. There is no escape, and you are just being tortured all day, every day, right? Is that a fair thing to allow, right? To force innocent individuals to wake up in a prison with no escape, where they're being tortured all day, every day, and then eventually to death. So no, that's not fair. That's not acceptable, and nothing can justify that, right? What could possibly justify that? How much ice cream does it take? How many sunsets do you need to watch to justify somebody being tortured horrifically or an animal being tortured horrifically? Well, the answer is there is no amount of extreme suffering that most people care about, right? There could be any amount of suffering, and they still wouldn't care. Right? So, the universe could just be full of animals dying terribly and people would just not care. So they're not capable of caring, essentially. It doesn't matter how evil, how terrible the situation is, how much extreme suffering there is. People are not actually capable of caring. Right? So things could get much worse and people still won't care. Right? So that's the problem. It's not that people have an ethical or good reason not to care about suffering. It's that they're actually genetically not capable of caring. All right. Do we have anybody in the Discord? Yes. Hello.
Yeah, we have Johnny.
It looks like there's someone.
Hello there.
Yeah. Hello. How you doing?
Hello.
Yeah,
Good, thank you. Good. Hey, I've just stumbled across you on YouTube here, and I thought I'd join the debate. I don't think you are correct.
Okay. Why not?
I think there's all sorts of good things that come from life.
Right.
I don't think that we need to necessarily mass extinct the whole world and all of life to end suffering. I think that suffering is a part of the experience of life, whether it's of a conscious thing or not.
Can you name some of those good things that come from life?
Love or the significant other, love from your family,
love for the significant other, having a girlfriend, in other words, and love for the family. Okay, fine then. Just love.
I mean, infinite things, dude.
Just
honestly,
to name four of them.
Name four of them. I enjoy watching the Formula One. I enjoy watching the sunset.
Wow.
I enjoy a cool evening after a long day. So these are all
so
things
amazing.
that you can enjoy. You don't have to.
Amazing, right? F1 races are the best, right? So now, tell me one thing. You listed four pleasures. I will list four sufferings now. One is children getting raped. Okay. Then then there is predation. There is starvation. There is like children screaming in war zones. Right. Just these four sufferings. Can any of your Formula One race or like watching sunsets or having a girlfriend? Can any of it justify child rape?
So I understand what you're saying. I'm not trying to deny that there is suffering
yes or
in
no
the world.
question. Yes or no question.
Can my girlfriend or sorry,
Yeah,
my wife? Can the love between me and my wife stop that from happening?
Can you say that you need to watch one Formula One race? It's very good. So if children get raped, it's fine. Can you say that?
No, I'm not saying it's a justification.
No, right? Then extinction.
You did offer
Then
those
extinction must be
justifications.
caused.
You did offer those as
Then
justifications.
extinction is right.
No, I didn't offer those as justification.
Yes, you did.
I offered those as.
Yes, you did.
Yes, you did.
Yes, of course you did.
No.
Don't be ridiculous.
No, I didn't.
No,
of course.
so they
So
don't.
if-
So you accept. So you accept they don't justify sufferings.
We asked you for things
So,
that justify the suffering.
Doesn't make you right, guy. I'm
Yeah,
just saying
that you just
a lot
because you
of good
talk, you're
in
not
the world.
right is not an argument. So yeah, let's say
No,
you're saying
Denzel was just yelling at me.
okay. So you're saying there's lots of good in the world, okay? But does it justify things like all of the unacceptable things in the world, like child abuse?
No, but I don't think that they necessarily correlate, right?
How?
Well, I mean, the love that I feel for my wife
Dude,
has nothing to do with child abuse.
You literally said don't cause extinction because I'm having girlfriend, I have Formula One race and all.
Yeah.
How do you go to like that doesn't correlate now? You literally used it as a justification to like justify these sufferings. You said it's a part of life. You just accept it. There is also good things in life. You focus on that, right? So I am saying these are not justifications. You just stand at one place. Are these? Does Formula One races, watching Formula One races, does it justify children getting raped, or yes or no? Just stand at
No,
one place.
nothing
No, it
justifies
doesn't.
that.
No,
Not a
it
single
doesn't.
thing.
Right? No, it doesn't. Right? So you don't have any justifications for life continuing.
I
So
didn't
you
realize I
either
was here to
accept
try.
extinction or you accept you are a
Hang
hypocrite
on,
and you
buddy.
selfishly want your life to continue.
I didn't say that my life justifies other people's suffering. I think that, and don't get me wrong, I realize there's suffering in the world. There really is. But I think there are more positive things in life than there are negative things.
So does that
Dude,
mean that,
you're
like,
just
as long as
going
it's
in circles, man.
51%, it's okay? Like, does that mean, like, if 51% of the population is abusing 49%, then it's okay as long as it's a majority is positive? Is that a good ethical framework that we should? That basically the question is it
that's an
is it
inaccurate,
acceptable?
facile argument.
Should we let
Dude,
the minorities
your
suffer?
argument is like your argument is the same as a gang rapist.
Yeah.
So like if 100 people rape one child, 100 people are majority. There are more positives than one child getting raped. That is a negative. So we can support gang rapes also by your logic.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's
No,
the exact
so
same thing.
Like even if 8 billion
No,
people
you
are
guys-
also,
It is the
even
same
if
thing.
8 billion people are suffering.
I'm not saying that 100 wrongs make a right. I'm
Yes, you
saying
are.
that there
You are
are
literally
wonderful.
saying that.
I'm
Dude,
not.
you're literally
No, I'm
saying
not.
that. Yes, you know,
If
you
there's-
want to
You're
have your
literally
cake and
saying
eat
that.
it. You want to have your cake and eat it.
You
are
are
saying that.
you literally said lot of positives are there as a justification to justify sufferings.
So I don't do these things. I don't partake in the things that you
Just
guys are
because
talking
you
about.
don't partake, see, you don't, you are against extinction, right? That means you want these things to continue because these things are going to be there until the end of time, right? So either you are like you are like, see, you raping or not, or you letting a rapist rape, it doesn't matter to the victim. It only matters to the victim that rape happened to them. It's very simple.
Your world changing idea is to get rid of every single living thing on earth to
Now you
cancel
got it.
out the negative that happens.
Yes.
Okay,
and you are not able to give one positive.
That is
Still now,
absolutely crazy. And your
yeah,
movement is the
yeah, very
equivalent of the
crazy.
flat Earth movement.
Yeah, we are very
honestly.
crazy. We are very crazy. But you, for wanting to watch F1 races, letting rape continue is very holy, very sane.
So
That is what this world has come
bearing
to.
in mind that I don't take part in these things, and I assume you don't either. What are
Yeah,
you
you
specifically
again,
doing
you
to
not
stop it from
taking part.
happening?
You not taking
Stop yelling
part.
at me and interrupting.
You can literally be. See, you are
Is this
literally
how
pro
debate?
rape. You are pro suffering. You are literally pro suffering. I fight for extinction for all. I fight for extinction for all because that is the only way to end that end all sufferings.
That's right. Yeah, the victims are just an inconvenience to that guy.
We gather a movement. We start researching on what is the most vast and thorough extinction possible, and when we have the answer, we use scientific method to execute it. That's it.
Okay, so that's not really any plan at all. In fact,
It is a plan.
obviously the most. Well, yeah, I'm sure, and I imagine it's going really well.
Yeah, continuing.
The biggest extinction. Yeah, I'm sure the biggest extinction that ever happened on this planet was the K1 extinction, which was a fucking massive meteor that slammed into Earth, and it still didn't kill everything.
Yeah, it wasn't intelligently done. It wasn't intelligently done. So you're comparing nature and
so
zero.
You think you can pull a bigger meteor to Earth somehow?
Pulling a meteor is not the only way to cause extinction, right?
Okay, so what is it that you guys are proposing?
That is what I said.
You said you were going to do something scientific.
It's not just
what
about
is that? And who are these scientists that are doing it for
Can
you?
somebody mute this moron, please?
Oh, you don't have a.
I do have a plan. Like you, if you don't keep interfering, I can talk about it. That is what I told you about. What? Yeah, yeah, I can. I can start the work for it from my mom's basement. Better than being in your mom's basement watching F1 and saying rape should continue. Better than that, I am in my mom's basement trying to eradicate the same rape. So, uh yeah, uh yeah. So because of some because of some F1 because of some F1 you let children get raped. That is not extreme at all. Yeah, I agree. You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. Yeah. Uh-huh. Mhm. Again, gang rape logic. That is what more children raping more people raping a child means it's better. Gang rape logic.
Exactly. Yeah, it truly is the same as gang abuse in that sense, because what the victims will have to go through will actually probably be worse than being abused sexually. So, to be forced into a life of pure hell, that's the ultimate harm. There is nothing worse than that. And so to gang up on innocent victims and to force them into that so that you can have fun is just pure evil. And this is also like to make it even more evil, right? This mentality specifically requires that you ignore the victims and just never care about them. That if you care about them, it's wrong, because you won't be as happy, and that won't justify their cruelty as much. So yeah, the gang rape mentality says, instead of preventing the victim from being raped, we just need to get more rapists on board, and then it will become ethical. And that's the exact same way that life exists. So if there's one person in a bad life and 99 people in a good life, then people are like, oh yeah, that's just life, right? But it is the exact same thing as those 99 people raping the one person all day every day, right? Torturing them all day every day, right? If life and a disease or a disability is doing that to the person, then it's no worse than if the 99 people are doing it themselves, right? The victim suffers the same. So yeah, 99 people existing for one happy person, for one victim, right? It is the same, right? It's ganging up on the victim in just a different way, essentially, a way that you can try and gaslight into saying is somehow more acceptable, right? When actually it's absolutely not acceptable at all. Okay, do we have anyone else in the Discord? Yeah, we've got somebody joining the Discord now. Again, we're looking to get more debates going, so guys, join the Discord here, and we'll be able to get you up to debate live, ask any questions, or have a discussion as well. Do you support extinction? Do you support the end of all suffering? Or are you like most people? Do you think that no amount of suffering would ever justify extinction? Effectively meaning that you just don't care about the victims at all. That is the case for most people. Let's see, do we have anyone in the Discord? Is there anyone in the room? Make your
I'm here.
presence known.
There is I.
Yeah. Do you have any more questions? Mr. Formula One justifies child abuse.
Well, it wasn't Formula One justifies child abuse. So just back to your analogy of one person out of 100 being raped and tortured every day. And don't get me wrong, I realise that this stuff happens. So to end the suffering of one person, you extinct the other 99.
No, it doesn't work like
Exactly.
that. It doesn't work like that. You have to prevent it from happening, which is why extinction prevents all of that. Right? You don't go and say, oh my God, there's been a rape. Right, we have to extinct them. No, it doesn't work. That's the current system, which allows suffering and then tries to deal with it afterwards. You have to just prevent all of that from ever happening. That's how extinction works.
Yes, I realize what extinction is, but I just mean that you're killing everything, including the victim, including the suffering person. Is that right for you to decide
Most of
to
the
what degree to what degree someone is suffering
listen,
that
most
they
of the
should be dead?
stakeholders, most of the stakeholders, the vast majority are non-existent potential life in the future, right? So preventing billions of years of future victims. So the stakeholder majority is in the future, right? So those that have to be euthanized are a tiny, essentially insignificant. Well, it is significant. We still have to do it ethically, but it's a tiny minority in comparison, effectively. So those who want to keep
in
living,
human lives,
those who want to keep living
over
at the
8 billion
expense of
today.
those who want to keep living at the expense of allowing billions of more years of suffering, right? It's the ultimate selfishness. It's not just I would allow one person to be tortured so I can be happy. It's I would allow billions of years of torture so that I can be happy, right? I won't allow humanity to be made extinct and the suffering to stop. I'm just going to make sure it carries on forever because I'm selfish and I want it to carry on forever. That's the mentality.
So does that mean that we could, instead of extincting all living things on Earth, that we could just stop living things from reproducing? Would that give you the same?
No, not at all. Because that
but
doesn't.
then there is nothing in the future, right?
No,
if we're not reproducing, it's such a tiny, insignificant amount at the moment.
There's still
let's call it 8.5 billion.
It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. If you make extinction optional, right, then people will just keep reproducing. They won't choose it. And if you do sterilization, then that doesn't help the victims that need euthanasia today or that will need it tomorrow. It still allows suffering.
So what makes you guys think that you know what victims need? That you assume that victims want to die?
Well,
so,
it doesn't work like that. Right?
I mean,
essentially, you're
no,
asserting.
it does, because you guys are the one planning on blowing up the planet.
You're asserting
so you guys
an unreasonable standard.
That...
You're asserting an unreasonable standard, which effectively translates to
you are.
How can you decide child abuse is wrong? Who are you to say that? Right? That's what it ends up meaning.
So not only do you kill the child, you kill the child's family, and you kill the perpetrator.
Again, what about
so you kill the one evil?
What about the rest
and then
of the
you wipe out
stakeholders?
the whole person's family anyway.
What about
the rest of what, sir?
What about the stakeholders, right? What about the victims?
You also kill them all
I mean,
anyway.
You're killing all of them too. But what right do you have to decide whether they should live or die?
Keep being killed if we don't.
What right do you have to...
They're going to keep being killed if we don't. So the default will have much more killing, and you're suggesting we allow that. And then when we say we should have less killing and no killing, you're saying, oh, guys, no, we should allow killing to just carry on forever because killing would be wrong. Right? It's the ultimate
but I mean,
hypocrisy.
you guys are the ones doing the killing.
No, it's the ultimate
Yours
hypocrisy.
Is the hypocrisy.
You would say that it would be wrong to murder Hitler then, right?
Yeah,
no. So you're a hypocrite.
No, I didn't.
You're
I
a
didn't
hypocrite.
say that.
You're a hypocrite. Face it.
Why is that?
Because you're saying.
Can you explain to me why I'm a hypocrite?
Because you're saying that it's wrong to cause suffering to end suffering. And you just said you would murder Hitler, but that we shouldn't.
Well, that was
do the same thing.
The ratio you're talking about is off, right? So, for example, let's say
no, it's massively in our favor.
20 million.
Massively in our favor, right? Any killing
it's
that
not.
has.
But
listen,
if you
shut up for a second. Any
so
killing...
I kill one person to save 20 million.
100% for a second. So yeah, any killing that might have to be done for extinction, right, is less killing than will happen if we don't do extinction. So especially for wild animals, there is absolutely no excuse, no argument against this, right? They are literally just being killed like that, just pumped into the world and eaten alive. So the suggestion that extinction could cause more suffering than it prevents is a farce, right? It's a complete joke. It's like literally saying that one speck of sand on a beach is more than the entire beach. Like, that's the level of irrationality that it takes to say that extinction would cause more suffering than it prevents.
So if you, can you guys hear me again?
Yep.
Have you unmuted me?
Yeah, go for it.
Nice. So if you guys truly believe what you're talking about, why don't you guys get the ball rolling?
Oh my God!
And just start doing.
That's it. So he's basically conceded the debate, right? That is what has actually happened in a factual way. So instead of any counter argument, He just wanted to say, why don't you guys just kill yourselves? So that he's run out of it.
So much for like holy guy who doesn't want deaths. He
Yeah.
wants us to kill ourselves.
Yeah, the guy that says we should allow killing to carry on forever. Funnily enough, he wants us to kill ourselves. So this is like the most pro-killing guy ever. Whereas we want to make killing impossible. Whereas it will definitely carry on forever unless we do that. So yeah, look, these guys are monsters. They are effectively evil. Humans are monsters, and they also want to have their cake and eat it. Right? They want to be monsters, but then say that they're not monsters. To say I don't support suffering, but I will allow it. It's literally like I want to be a terrible person, but say I'm a good person. Is that okay? It's the same thing, right?
And literally, I don't know what these morons come up with. Oh my god, extinction has killed the victim. The extinction has killed everybody. The victim, the perpetrator, everybody. We just need to kill the rapist. What the fuck are you even talking about? You people are literally pro-killing, right? You want deaths to continue forever. You also, like, if life continues also, both the perpetrator and the victim are dead. But before they die, they reproduce and create another criminal and another victim.
Someone in the Discord is saying that Steve has admitted to killing 90% of the population. And that's why he won't debate you. That's pretty insane.
What?
Yeah, so someone joined the Discord and said, I don't want to debate with Steve because he has already admitted to killing 90% of the population, which would collapse society. Which is crazy because that's the exact opposite of what we advocate for. Actually, the more humans, the better right now. So we want humanity to continue reproducing temporarily until we've done everything we can to contribute towards the most vast and thorough extinction possible. And so, yeah, this guy is saying Steve is suggesting we should just kill people.
I didn't even bring up the word 90% anywhere. What the fuck?
Yeah. So anyone else that has any questions or wants to debate, join this Discord right here. It's an extremely easy and quick process. You can punch this URL into your Safari or Chrome or internet browser on mobile or on a computer, and it will take you into the debate room and will get you up on live. Now, you do have a chance before coming up to say hello in the chat, so it doesn't take you straight in. You do get a minute to prepare yourself. But anyone that has any questions or wants to join the movement, feel free to join the Discord and we'll bring you in and have a discussion. So what else have we got? Would they suffer more from the lack of food, from killing animals? Or guys, a lot of people are constantly trying to differentiate between do animals suffer more? Do humans suffer more? Does starving make you suffer more? Or does being... It's all bad, right? There's no need to differentiate realistically unless we are forced to, right? All of this differentiation that people are doing between different types of suffering is not for any good reason. It's just out of curiosity, effectively, most of these questions in the chat.
Not curiosity. They just want to defend their own movement. They want to prove that farmed animals suffer more than wild animals so that they can keep being in veganism irrationally. They want to prove that, women suffer a lot, so that they can keep being in feminism. But literally, like, it's very I think it's very disrespectful for the victims to just compare and say that a starvation victim suffers more than a war victim. You don't know that, right?
Exactly. And there will be vice versa. Yes, some cases will be worse than other cases, and vice versa. You starving to death might be worse in one case. Being eaten alive might be worse in a different case. It's all bad. There's no need to sort of differentiate. Again, that only serves to defend suffering. To say, well, these animals suffer worse. No, they don't. Basically, they all suffer terribly. Okay. Any more questions in the chat? Let's have a look. Your moral obligation is to leave people to have their consent. No. Would you say that about child abusers? Okay, well, clearly you would, effectively. This guy in the chat says, our obligation is to leave people to their decisions, to let them make their own decisions, and to have the freedom to do so. So this is it's anarchy, basically.
That's something this previous moron also, he also brought it up, right? So basically, if a child is like, it doesn't like water, but it's like, you just let the child, be and get infected because the child doesn't want to bath. No, right. So it's literally like idiotic to ask for consent from unintelligent beings. And from unintelligent, like even if you would go rescue a dog, like some dogs are aggressive, right? They bite you, right? But like you are just trying to rescue the dog. The dog is thinking that you are trying to harm the dog. Yeah, you are rescuing the dog, so you just put some medicine and like put you tie its mouth with a rope, and then you put the medicine and you leave it alone, right? So this is like literally idiotic to go and ask the dog consent if you want to get cured, right? And when I say unintelligent beings, that doesn't just mean animals. Even humans can be unintelligent, right? So you take uh, very religious Islamic woman, for example, right? They oppress themselves, right? They support their own religion and then they like pave way for women oppression themselves, right? So why do I need to mind their consent in like liberating them and like giving them rights? I'm sure some of very orthodox Islamic women will come forward and fight against feminism. I know a few conservatives who are against who are women and are against women rights. Okay, so all these things are like idiotic. Like it's literally pointless to go to an unintelligent being and ask for its consent. And literally, we don't need uh, so if somebody is saying if somebody doesn't consent to obviously animals are not gonna be like pro-life or whatever. They don't have ideologies and stuff. But if somebody is pro-life, that means they literally want rapes to continue. You literally saw that moron, previous moron, right? So he wants to continue rapes because like of F1 race. He wants to continue predation because he needs a girlfriend, because of sunsets, right? Why do I need to respect the consent of this moron? If somebody wants to continue rape, if somebody wants to continue starvation, if somebody wants to continue wars, why do I need to respect any of their concerns?
Yeah, we don't. Effectively, they're not rational enough to be responsible, or for their essentially opinions to carry weight or significant weight. In the same way that you wouldn't trust a broken computer to do a job, we shouldn't trust irrational humans to make responsible decisions for themselves or for others. So we have to decide for every person and for every animal exactly what to do, and regardless of their autonomy or choice. And so the decision and the correct thing to do is to prevent all of the suffering, even if it means preventing happiness and pleasure. And so, yeah, we have to do that. We have to choose for them.
Yeah, that moron also like was saying another point also. Like you don't have a plan to cause extinction. You have zero plan. What is pro-lifers plan to like end child rape? What is pro-lifers plan to end predation, starvation, diseases forever? They have zero plans, right? Any movement you take, like when they start, they cannot name, like 1,000 years from now on August 2nd, uh, and 1998, blacks will be liberated. Nobody can name like that, right? Everybody has a plan like this only. We gather movement, we fight for it, we research for what is the most effective way to end that oppression. In this case, pro-lifeism, like life continuing, right? This is the plan, right? I don't know what the fuck these idiots mean by plan. Like that idiot was saying you are sitting in your mom's basement and just talking about extinction. He is sitting in his mom's basement and just saying F1 races justify child rape. That's all they do. They have like literally zero plans. Their entire idea coming up here, not even one pro-lifer who comes up here says like we can end child rape, we can end this, we can end this if we do that. They just come up here to say that like F1 races justify child rape. There are also a lot of positives, right? So meaning you have no motivation to end it at all. You don't even have a motivation to have a plan, right?
Yeah, it's about dismissing the idea. So they dismiss the idea in their heads, and so but all it takes for them to dismiss an idea is like just anything, right? Because they're irrational, and they think that they can get us to dismiss the idea with their crazy arguments as well, because it works on them. So surely it will work on us too, right? Well, no, Formula One does not justify child abuse, and you can say that it's a straw man, but that is what he said, right? That genuinely is what he said. We said, what can possibly justify these terrible things? He said, well, I enjoy Formula One. So why else did he say that? All right.
Yeah, then he was like, no, I don't like when it comes to it, he's like, no, I don't do rapes directly. I mean, like, so you do it indirectly, right? You want this to continue. You are pro rape, right? You're literally, you said like yeah, child rape is there, it's part of life, you accept it. And then you should really focus on F1 races though. F1 races are important, right?
Yeah, it's so effectively they're not able to consider what makes extinction correct. So extinction is correct, but they're just not able to consider the parts that do make it correct. So when they try and think about it, it gets gobbled up in their mind, and they end up thinking that that something completely insane is correct instead. Like, yeah, Formula One justifies child abuse. Yeah, it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. We get to see the cars go vroom vroom. That's worth any amount of child abuse, right? Obviously, that's insane. So how can they say such insane things? It's because they are irrational. Animals are irrational, and so are humans, right? And that irrationality is essential for their survival, and that's why we still have it. A lion can't care about its victim. It can't care about its own suffering, otherwise it won't want to survive, and it can't care about the suffering of its children, or otherwise it won't have them. So life can only exist when it just completely doesn't care about suffering existing at all, and it carries on with intelligence, with humans. And so that's why they're exploiting animals, allowing suffering, making each other suffer, making themselves suffer. It's because they're just not capable of actually dealing with that problem in the world. They've evolved to specifically become incapable of dealing with it. Otherwise, they just wouldn't have survived and reproduced. So life can only exist irrationally, or until it becomes rational and you have rational humans starting to exist. And then we can actually continue reproducing rationally for a good reason now, to work towards the end of all suffering. So that's how it works. All right, rational way to, someone says, kill everyone with science. No, it's to end all suffering with science, or to make everyone safe with science. So yeah, extinction is about providing safety from suffering. And the only downside to this is a bit of pleasure, a bit of happy lives or happiness, really. So even for the happy people, it provides them the best safety possible, right? The most effective safety possible is what extinction guarantees, even for the happy people. So it provides them safety. It's a good thing. The only loss from extinctionism is some worthless happiness. But in the same way that we wouldn't care about the loss of joy and beauty from a child abuser being stopped, right? The pleasure that the child abuser is enjoying, right? We wouldn't care if that stopped existing, and we shouldn't care about any pleasure having to stop existing. It's the same. You wouldn't want a child abuser to be having loads of pleasure at the expense of their victims, and we shouldn't have any life, being tortured just so that some can have fun. It's the same as child abuse, right? So that's why when Steve said that, it was perfectly correct, that it is like, yeah, supporting life is to be a child abuser yourself, effectively, because you are participating in it. You're supporting it, you're relying on it, you depend on it, you encourage it, you need it, right? You literally need it. So the pro-life mentality literally needs child abuse and animal abuse and all of these terrible things. Lives of pure hell. It needs them to exist. Of course it does. You can't have life exist without these things. If there were a way to do that, we would have found it, or somebody would suggest it, but there just simply isn't. So should we have life exist? Should we have Formula One, even if children are getting abused, to make it possible? Should we essentially force children to be abused so that we can have a bit of fun? No, absolutely not. And yet that is what life is doing right now, all around the world. So the number of victims of life going through lives of hell, it's way bigger than anyone realizes. It's way worse. It's far more widespread. There are far more sufferers wishing they'd never been born, begging for death, being tortured horrifically around the world by nature, by diseases, or by people, by animals. It's far worse than people realize. We're effectively living in pure hell, and the very few lucky ones are saying, this is great, we should keep it going at all costs. We should never even care about the bad parts. We should just leave them and say it's a part of life. So humans are effectively demons in hell, ruling over all of the extreme suffering and saying, what do you mean, shut hell down? What are you talking about? Or it's like a child abuser saying, what do you mean, abolish suffering? It's like a slave owner saying, what do you mean, abolish suffering? It's like an animal abuser saying, what do you mean, abolish suffering? Why should we prevent suffering? So yeah, all of the people in the chat saying, oh, what? Why should we end all suffering? It's like, why shouldn't we allow child abuse? What's wrong with that, basically? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. So it really is just a complete inability to care about any of the victims of life, and to just always support them suffering, and to just always defend their suffering, right? In the same way that a child abuser would defend what he's doing. He might say, well, they're a child, they might not remember it when they're older. They might go on to have a good life anyway. They might not be too traumatized, right? So a child abuser will just come up with as many excuses for their crime as possible, and that is the exact same thing people are doing when trying to come up with ways to defend life existing. It's the same as a child abuser trying to defend his abuse. And it's the same as people saying, yeah, let's defend all the abuse and cruelty in the world because we need to have fun, right? Let's have fun and not care how much suffering there is in the world, not do anything about it. But, well, that's not good enough, guys. That's not good enough. So what's the difficult thing to do? The difficult thing, but the right thing, is to be prepared to give up everything to do the right thing for the victims. So at the minute, it's the exact opposite. People are exploiting the victims, torturing them for cheeseburgers and stuff like that. Whereas we should do the exact opposite. Instead of selfishly exploiting the suffering of others, we should selflessly help the sufferers and prevent the suffering of others. So that's what extinctionism is about. It's about being rational, empathetic, doing the right thing even if it's difficult, being against all types of cruelty and forcing innocence into suffering. So that's it. You either want to work towards a suffering-free world, or you just don't care how much suffering there is. There's two choices. So if you want there to be no child abuse, no innocent people being forced into lives of pure depression, begging for death, wishing they'd never been born, to have to live an entire life, guys, of just pure pain and excruciating suffering, right? Where every moment is just another reminder that you're a joke to the oppressors of the world, like the lucky ones. So, I mean, it's often described as watching heaven from hell. So the unlucky ones in this world, those who are living lives of pure hell, not only are they suffering terribly and horrifically, but they also have to watch all of the selfish monsters, all of the selfish people having an disgustingly decadent good time at their expense while causing more suffering and allowing more suffering. So it's like a victim of hell watching the demons have fun. And when you're a victim being tortured, even looking up to these demons and the selfish people and their happiness, it is excusable and understandable that some of the victims might say, I wish that was me. I wish I wasn't being tortured and I was happy, right? So even the victims kind of don't care about other victims. It's all about themselves as well. It's not, wow, this shouldn't be allowed to happen to anyone else ever again. It's, oh, I wish I was better off, right? I wish I was better off. So not caring about all of the other sufferers and the worse suffering, right? People and animals who have it worse than you. So people really struggle with understanding those things. Right, do we have any more questions in the chat? And if anybody else wants to debate, it's just me alone in the Discord now. It's just myself. Steve has gone off to do some other stuff. So if anyone wants to debate me one-on-one, 1v1, then join the Discord now, and we'll get you in. Right, I think there is one person in the Discord that might join for a debate. Let's see if they want to come up. And anyone else, yeah, let's get you in. Join the link over here. So you believe in demons in hell? No, we are atheists. Strictly, completely atheists. Right? When we're talking about demons in hell, these are metaphors, descriptions, right? A child being abused is going through hell, right? Even though there is no real hell, we live in a natural world with no God, no heaven, no hell, right? We can still say that the victims of suffering go through hell, right? That for them, the world is effectively hell, right? Because they've just been forced to suffer terribly here. And all of the ones that could help, the humans, are actually choosing not to help, right? They're being like demons would, or like Satan or something, where they're choosing to torture the victims and to allow it so that they can have fun. So my point is simply that humans are so immoral and so amoral that they're basically demons, right? It's demonic what they're doing to animals in animal agriculture. It's basically demonic what they're doing to each other, right? And to themselves as well. It's just outrageous. It's unacceptable. So extinctionists are people that have high standards for life, high levels of respect for life. And that means it's too precious to allow it to suffer terribly, right? It's too precious to just not care about it. The victims really deserve to be cared about, to be valued, and to be helped. That's what extinctionism is about. So, people that support extinction, the activists like myself, we are not people that, woke up one day and thought, you know what, extinction sounds really cool. Maybe that would be a funny idea to make an ideology out of. It's the opposite. None of us want extinction or started out wanting extinction. We were activists, people trying to become better people. And yeah, the rational community has essentially decided and determined and figured out that this is the correct thing to do. This is the rational thing, the ethical thing to do. And so any rational person will come to the same conclusion. So in that sense, we are collecting together all of the rational people in the world who are going to help us run the world responsibly and ethically and no longer allow suffering, just in an unlimited sense, right? So that's it. So extinctionism is rational. It's the most rational that you can be, basically. The most rational ideology. It's one that says that we're against all types of cruelty instead of just some. Right? Veganism is against a certain type of cruelty, but allows the others, right? Allows all of the other types of cruelty. And every other movement does the same thing. They're not against all types of cruelty. They're specifically in favor of allowing the extreme victimization and forcing of innocent victims into pure hell. Right? It's not rational or fair or acceptable. Okay, what moral and ethical system are you using just to justify your claim? None. We don't actually rely on these, this nonsense like moral and ethical systems. We just rely on rationality and logic and empathy, right? Doing the right thing, essentially. And so, yeah, the rational people have come together, spoken about it, and determined that extinction is the right thing to do. And that's how life works, right? You can determine that 1 + 1 = 2. You can also determine that extinction is the right thing to do. That is how it works, but that's not how it works for most people because they are irrational, and therefore, effectively, everything to do with their brain and their logic is broken, right? It's defective. It doesn't work properly. So they can do 1 + 1 = 2, but when it gets like more difficult than that, more complicated, that's when they can't go beyond it, right? Should we allow all suffering or end it? Should we allow suffering or not? Should we allow extreme cruelty or not? And people are like, allow child abuse. I don't know. So it's completely irrational. They're not able to think rationally, right? And that's unfortunate. That's one of the biggest problems, is that humanity is irrational, and that's causing all of the suffering, allowing all of the suffering in the world. So we have to work towards a rational world. And that means growing the movement and finding the rational people and gathering them together to do the right thing, to end all suffering. But it also means creating more rational people as well. So reproducing. Extinctionists have to reproduce so that we can keep creating more rational people. And we should also work towards a world where we are controlling the genetics and improving the genetics for humanity to make them more rational. So in the same way that improving genetics for humans is already happening to make certain diseases less likely for them and stuff like that, we can also make humans more rational with science and medicine and genetics, essentially. So that's what we have to do. And once we have a rational world full of humans, then we can all start working together to do the right thing instead of the selfish thing. So the irrational humans want to do the wrong thing, and only the rational humans will do the right thing. So we have to work towards a world with more rational people. Otherwise, the majority will always be irrational people that support cruelty. So yeah, that's it. Now, we might be able to take over the world with a minority, and that's kind of the expected course that we're heading towards, where with between 1 to 10% of the population, we should be able to do a revolution and take over the planet and start running it ethically and start carrying out extinction. But even if it's not enough people to do it with a minority, then it's also still very possible to achieve extinction with a majority. So that is something that we can work towards, absolutely. So if humans start improving their genetics and making themselves more rational, or if we start doing that and introduce that, which we are working on doing, then eventually humanity will become rational enough to agree with not allowing cruelty and suffering anymore, and the forcing of innocent individuals into lives of pure hell. So that's obviously wrong. That's obviously not something we should allow. Someone says, James is the arbiter of rationality. Well, yeah, I mean, effectively, rational people like myself, we are the arbiters of rationality because we are the ones who are rational, effectively. So what or who determines what rational is? Well, again, it's only going to be rational people that are going to do that effectively. Now, irrational people can try, but they will fail, basically. So yeah, obviously only rational people can have a good grip on rationality itself. And, there's lots of ways to prove that extinctionists are more rational than other people, right? So just that alone, it's a very easy way to prove it, right? We can easily prove that extinctionists are more rational, and there's lots of ways to prove it. And one of my favorite ways is by exposing irrationality during a debate, right? We can point out that if you're not able to answer that question, then it proves that you're not rational. So there are questions which are too rational for people to be able to answer. And that's something that most people
have not learned about yet, do not understand, because the science of rationality itself is a new science, basically, because effectively we've only just started getting rational humans. So the understanding of rationality itself has never been done correctly, and we can only now start to explore it properly. James, your position is circular. Only rational people will agree with your position. Yeah, only rational people will agree with this position, but that's not circular at all. That makes perfect sense if you think about it. Irrational people will not be able to agree with rational things. Right? In the same way that religious people cannot agree that it doesn't make sense to be religious, irrational people will not be able to agree to rational concepts like we shouldn't allow cruelty, basically. So that's part of it. You've blah blah blah. You've got the science, ethics, and rationalism locked down. I mean, it's something that's still expanding, that we're still researching and exploring. We do have a very good grip on the science, ethics, and rationality, but it's something that we're still learning, right? We can still continue to expand our understandings on them. Okay, so yeah, still waiting for anyone to join the Discord if anyone wants to debate. So feel free to do that, guys. Oh, hello.
Oh, hey, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. What did I miss? Any insightful conversations or?
Yeah, not too much. Yeah, just this and that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate you chatting. If I don't know if there was anyone else, but I wouldn't mind going back and forth a little more.
Yeah, sure. Do you have any questions?
Yeah. I'm just like, because I understand your position, and like I try to like grant credence to as much as I can and like stay open minded. The way it kind of like boils down in my mind is that there's kind of two different paths. Like there's kind of like my way I'm looking at it, and then there's your way of looking at it. And I think our both of our goal is to reduce the amount of suffering. Could we agree on that, or?
Not to reduce it, but to abolish it. So,
Do you think
for
abolishing
example,
something is reducing it? I mean,
yeah,
let's
so
not be pedantic.
think if anti-slavery activists said our goal is to just reduce it, but never to end it, right? That would be ridiculous.
Right, but they could be saying let's reduce it to nothing. Like I don't want to play word
How?
games.
You
I want to
can't do
actually
that.
get to like.
That's not how it works. You can't reduce it to nothing. You have to end it. There is no way to reduce it to nothing, right? They didn't reduce it to nothing. How would you do that? Just go around and just shoot every slave owner? Just keep going on and doing it? That doesn't work.
Right. No, I'm not saying that you can reduce suffering to zero. Hypothetically, I'm saying that like in a wider sense, like you're not. You're not going.
Reducing suffering is a bad thing, basically, because it comes at the direct expense of preventing suffering. Right? So a slave would not be happy that you've reduced his suffering by giving him a pillow and said, "I will never free you, but here's this pillow. I disagree with you being free, but here's a pillow." Right? Is the slave going to be like, "Oh my God, this guy's the best ever"? I mean, yeah, he might appreciate the pillow, but
I don't view it that way, and you're gonna come at me and say, "Oh, so he's
you're not viewing
defending
it that way.
slavery. He's defending child." But
that's just having your cake and eating it, right? You want to have your cake and
Okay,
eat it. To say I don't view it that way is to say, yeah, I have no way to disagree with what you said, other than just
No, I
saying
do have a way to
with it.
disagree with you. I'm trying to have a respectful
Yeah,
conversation.
but my point
Did you
is
agree
that when
like
people say
life is?
"Oh, I just view it differently," it's like saying I have no way of disagreeing with what you said, so I'm just going to disagree with it in a way that doesn't engage with the argument.
I agree. If that was my argument against your position, that it wouldn't be a very good argument. But obviously, that's not my argument. Is that I just view it differently. But
that's the same thing, bro. That is the same thing. To say, look, if a slave owner said, "Should we end slavery?" I just view it differently. You wouldn't be like, "Wow, what a respectable position." You'd be like, "Wow, what a horrifically.
I'm trying to have a dialogue with you. Can you not I'm trying to like discuss it with you and like be sympathetic to your position. So like I'm kind of like easing my way into the argument that like
Okay.
just by saying that I'm not defending.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I'm not going to let you get away with stuff. Is the point, right? Because otherwise,
Oh
I
yeah,
would
sure,
be
sure. Yeah, you can
apologetic.
hold my feet to the fire and call me out if I say something, but don't like try to like nitpick my words into making me
Well,
say something.
sometimes
I'm
you
not
have to,
gonna-
right? Because when people say, "Well, that's just your view on it," it is gaslighting, right? It's dishonest.
No, okay, but if so, okay, I feel like we're not even gonna discuss the actual point because
do
we're
it
gonna
then.
have
Go
this
for it
like
then. Do it.
kind of like.
But again, if you're going to come out with things that just don't make sense and achieve gaslighting, then they do have to be called out, right? Because to say,
Do you think
because
is
it's
that
not
what you
valid.
think I'm doing?
It's
Is
yeah,
gaslighting you? Is
absolutely.
that
Because it's not
okay?
valid for a slave owner to
All right.
say, "Well, I just have a different view on it," right? That's effectively saying, "I'm not going to engage any of the reasons why you said it's wrong. I'm just going to ignore all of them and say I just
Yeah,
view it differently."
I'll leave it up to
So
the people
we shouldn't.
listening to
No,
see if
no, no.
that's
We
they think
shouldn't.
that
We
that's what I'm
shouldn't.
doing. That
Well,
I'm just
well,
trying
I'm
to
not
ignore
saying
your
that's what
point,
you're
or
doing,
rather
but
that I'm
that's what you did,
presenting an
and now you're
alternative
defending it.
perspective, and that we're going to compare the
Well,
prior
there
probability and
is
evidence
no
score and see what the
alternative
better evidence is.
perspective. There is no alternative perspective if you're just going to say, "Well, let's agree to disagree. I just have a different way of seeing it." That's the
Okay,
opposite. That's refusing
that's
to
not my
engage.
okay. So now that like because you're actually talking to me and not just an idea of something I said a while ago, that's not my position. I'm not saying
I'm
it's just a
just repeating your words back to you.
okay. All right, I'll leave that up for everyone else to decide. So, do you agree that life is generally better now than it was, let's say, like 1,000 years ago for most
No.
people, like overall? No.
Well, for animals, definitely not. For some people, yeah, probably.
Like humans, generally
are
speaking,
some
like do
lucky
you agree
humans,
that
yeah.
someone like confined to like a bed that's suffering a horrible like brain tumor from birth has lived like
Well,
probably a less fulfilling like.
in some ways, suffering just gets worse as time goes on. In lots of ways.
Right. I'm just trying to like find like anything that we can kind of start from and move like forward and like kind of find like any sort of agreement. But I'm just
Well,
wondering if
look,
you're like, do you think
if you're struggling to find a counter argument, then it's because there isn't one, and you're just trying to find one instead of having one, right? Which is
you're
irrational.
trying to have your movement to work, you're gonna have to like hear people out and like
No,
you're not gonna
we
convince
don't.
everyone
We
with
don't.
brute force, right?
The thing is, we don't believe in convincing other people, and it's because their capacity for rationality is compromised. So it's not about convincing people; it's
So
about
is it a
finding rational
hopeless
people.
movement, or I thought
No,
you
it's
wanted
the
to
opposite.
establish a government
No,
that
it's the
would work
opposite. So yeah,
towards
we're very confident.
reducing?
We're very optimistic and confident. We are going to be reproducing so that we can get more intelligent genetics out into the population. Steve, for example, is donating sperm regularly so that we can have more activists, more rational people in the world. And we're going to be doing this in a much bigger way in the future. Yeah, working towards a world
So
of rational
you think
humans.
your position is basically like the obvious position, and the only thing holding it back is people's like impulses and irrational beliefs. So as time moves on, the
not
population will
impulses.
generally. If I could like at least
It's
finish one
genetics
sentence, I'm
based. So
trying my best to let you.
it's genetically based, basically.
Right. So how is that different than? Okay. All right. I
So,
don't want to. I want to. I'm actually curious about your position and whether it's true. So I'm not. I'm gonna like try to move past all like the little like side arguments and stuff like that.
well, no, it's not an irrelevant side argument to say that you can't convince people if they don't have the genetic capacity, right? It's actually the most important thing to point out in
Right.
this
But
conversation.
that's why I said your position is essentially that as time moves on and humans get more intelligent, the only thing holding more people back from taking your view is essentially people's impulses and irrational beliefs, right? Like that's why people accept my position, and more people will accept your position in time as we evolve to be a smarter species. That's your position, right? Can we agree on that or no?
Yeah, basically, but just that
Cool.
it's a genetic thing, basically. But yeah, it manifests in
Right.
those
And
ways.
what do you think as time goes on means? Like that means future populations, and I
Yeah.
also mentioned evolved, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm talking about genetics. Yeah.
humanity's been evolving since it started, and it's now finally become rational through that evolution. Competition makes things more advanced, and so we've finally reached rationality. So that's kind of when life develops on a planet. It's just animalistic, it's irrational, and then eventually the competition and evolution finally creates, semi-intelligent people, and then finally fully rational people.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know how much of that I agree with, but that's cool. You just impregnate as many people as possible, and then eventually, like, more people will come to your position. That's cool. All right. Yeah. Anyways, from my view, I see it like two different ways, and you kind of have to ask yourself what's more realistic and likely. And I think you guys have done this, and you've come to a different position, which is fine. I think like almost any position in philosophy there isn't like a consensus on, and I think that two rational people can disagree on many different questions because it's not like some sort of axiomatic
But
mathematical proof.
they would be able to reach agreement, though. That's what makes them rational. That's the difference. So irrational humans are not able to reach agreement, whereas rational humans are. There's lots of differences, and that's one of them.
But it depends on the question. I don't think every
No,
question
it doesn't
at this
depend on the
time.
question. It does not
Okay,
depend
so
on
you,
that.
you think every possible
that's it.
question?
That's the difference between being irrational. Is it depends on this or that? No, rational humans can answer every question instead of dodging questions, and they can come to agreement through rational discourse, rational communication. Whereas others are too
I
irrational.
agree on a
to do
broad
that.
scale, but I'm saying that it's possible with the billions of people that exist and this incredibly smart people that exist on both sides that for some questions, not every question, like I think we can figure out 2 + 2 = 4, what color this is, making certain assumptions. But I think that there are some questions that two thinking, rational, honest actors can disagree on. Maybe you don't have to agree with that. And I think that's part of my point. But I think there's some things that, we might not know, that we might not ever know because we just don't have the access to it. At the end of the day, you believe our brains are materials or neurons firing around that have been evolved through certain processes that don't actually target truth.
Effectively, you're appealing to just we'll never know, essentially. Now, the thing is that we never apply that way of thinking to most things in the world. It's just that when we try to think about extinctionism and rational things like that, that's when these bizarre requirements like, we need certainty before we agree to do the right thing. These bizarre requirements start coming in, irrational requirements, effectively, which defend against rationality, right? Defend suffering, defend cruelty, defend survival and reproduction. And so it is completely irrational, and rational people can absolutely come to agree, whereas irrational people can't.
Right, on every single question. Like I'm not like, again, I feel like you're kind of blowing it up. I'm just trying to
on the
like
important questions, yeah.
Like
because it's not based on opinion like most people, like, oh, I like this, I don't like that, well then I disagree. No, for us it's based on the logic, right? The ethics and the reason. So in the same way that you can say, yes, it is logical that 1 + 1 = 2, you can say, yes, it is perfectly logical that extinction is the correct thing to do, the only correct thing to do.
Yeah. I think that there's some questions that we don't necessarily have enough answered to. Like is the universe infinite in the past, or did it have an absolute beginning?
So why
is something that people
what
still
bearing
debate
does that
about.
have on allowing child abuse? What bearing does that have? You're
Again,
saying that
I'm not
whether or not we should allow child abuse and all this suffering depends on maybe this, does the universe go back in time? What's that got to do with allowing cruelty?
But like I think anyone listening kind of understands what you're doing, but
I'm just asking you a question.
I'm
You're
trying.
dodging
I'm
the
just
question.
trying to have a conversation
So I'm putting
with
you on
I'm
strike
not
one
in
now.
like.
I'm putting you on strike one. You're dodging the question. So I asked you a question about what you said, right? Which is that we should allow all the suffering because the universe might go back in time or something weird like that. So I asked you how that's relevant, and
Anyone
you're now
listening, did I say that?
All right, he totally did. And as soon as I said, how is that relevant? He's like, oh my God, you can't ask me that. So that's a perfect example of irrationality. So, one of the main ways that we will see irrationality manifest is through the inability to answer questions, right? This is one of the easiest ways to see it live in action, basically, right? To see it with a spotlight on it, right? As soon as they dodge a question, that's like, oh, look, he's being irrational. like very obviously irrational. So extinctionists can answer any question, whereas others will refuse to answer questions, and specifically outright refuse, right? They would rather just leave instead of answering that question, because it collapses their position, it defeats their position, and it's beyond their capacity to answer that question, right? So why is it beyond their capacity to answer that question? It seems like, James, what do you mean it's beyond their capacity to answer that question? That doesn't make sense, right? Well, yeah, you would think so. And that's the magic of the inhibitor, right? The suppression of rationality and intelligence. Okay? It's that it will make these magical, crazy things happen, like people not being able to understand simple concepts. Okay? It does that in order to make them irrational so that they will survive and reproduce, right? Now, there is obviously more to it than that. It's a kind of a bigger and more complicated and advanced system than just what I described it as. And as soon as I get a whiteboard, I will be going into the science of all this stuff. I'm thinking of doing some science videos where we explore the genetics and what makes people more rational, and also some videos looking into like the logic of extinctionism, and the sort of the clean, simple, pure logic version of it, right? So we should absolutely go into that. So that's something I'll be doing. I did order a whiteboard, but it didn't come, so I'm going to have to order another whiteboard. But I think it'll be cool, right, to actually start looking at some stuff. Okay, let's see. Do we have anyone in the voice?
Somewhere
Shut
was
up,
it?
Hello.
tautology. Shut up, tautology. You did great, honestly. You killed it, bro. You did honestly really good, and I wish you would engage honestly and not disingenuously.
Wow, that's sad. Anyway, the thing is, now, Thoughtology was saying stuff like, I don't want to have an aggressive conversation here. Let's just think it through and stuff. And that's great. We totally support that. Now, the problem is it's very difficult to have respectful conversations when it comes to extinctionism, because people's subconscious will not allow it, right? How can I have a respectful conversation with someone that is lying to my face, gaslighting me, dodging questions, lying, right? It makes it very difficult. And so, yeah, that is pretty much the expected outcome of most conversations on extinctionism with irrational people. I've been doing this show for, I've got over 100 episodes at this point, and I've always been saying to everyone that the pattern you will see over and over again is that they start out sounding like kind of rational, and then the more you sort of push them to accept extinctionism, the more irrational they get, because they have to, right? Because firstly, they don't have the capacity to understand the more rational position, and secondly, because there's active suppression of their ability to understand the more rational position as well. So it's kind of a double whammy where their brain is like trying to do something and then it's being stopped, but it's also not very good at doing that thing because it's not very advanced, and then it's a lot easier for it to be suppressed. Whereas extinctionists have higher, stronger rationality, which can actually break through that suppression and find the answers, basically be rational. This is actually the specific biological process that I'm describing here. That's actually how it works. All right. Okay, guys. Let's see. Do we have any other callers? Not massively. I'm going to join one of the voice channels on Discord. If anybody wants to join and have a debate, we've got time for one more before I leave it for the day. Well, actually, you know what? I might actually have a lot more time to keep doing debates for the rest of the day. I've just realized something, but I probably will take a big break anyway. So no one's joining the Discord yet. Let's see. So yeah, I'm going to take a break, guys. Thank you for joining us. And if you want to keep discussing, you want to have voice conversations like people are doing in the Discord right now, discussing extinctionism with me or without me, you can do that in this Discord right here. So join us there. And join as well so that you can join the next stream. And if you want to debate me, whether it's today or tomorrow, then yeah, get yourself in. And anyone that wants to join, like the community, the fan club, or to support or whatever, ask questions, you can also join the Discord too. All right, guys, we'll see you in a bit. Thank you, everyone. And if you have any questions as well, anything else you want to ask, then you can join again that Discord. You can also join the main Discord for the actual movement, which is on the website proextinction.com. That Discord is full of activists, so that's for serious activism, such as is our WhatsApp group, which is also on the website. So for the WhatsApp and the Discord, it's for serious activists only, and you can join the movement that way. For anyone else, join this